Chapter 666. Lightning Dharmaraja young William had never imagined that a spatial rift would appear in this godforsaken place. But before he could leave, a huge suction force came over and instantly sucked him in. William felt as if he had entered a washing machine. His body shook and twisted. After a long time, he emerged from the space rift in a daze. But just as he was about to turn around, he landed on the ground. Swish! The space rift closed up. WQNMD. Isn't this 2F asterisk king coincidental? Is the super lucky halo so awesome? William wanted to complain, but he didn't know what to say. He was now on the cliff. Below him was a boundless abyss. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, he felt as if he was going to devour everything. Opposite him, or rather around him, it was chaos filled with all sorts of rules. In this narrow space, all sorts of rules filled the surroundings, and there were nomological fruits everywhere. Needless to say, the corpse of a true god should be at the bottom of the abyss. Gosh, the super luck halo is pretty good. This cliff is interesting. There's no danger here, and there's no aura of a god. As long as I don't fall into the abyss, I'll be rich. William swallowed hard. He decided to collect the nomological fruits at the edge of the cliff. It was a pity. Speak of the devil. William didn't know if he should stop scolding people. He saw that the ruined door, which was tens of meters away, had cracks that looked like a spider web. Then there was a loud bang. Bang! The seemingly indestructible door that could lead to the corpse of a true god was completely shattered. The auras of many god lords suddenly arrived. The shadows of 13 sovereigns simultaneously appeared within this narrow space. At this moment, William felt that he was suffocating, because the auras of the god lords were very chaotic. They seemed to have sensed something at the bottom of the abyss, and they almost started fighting. The god lords of darkness and light were at loggerheads. When they walked to the edge of the cliff, they had to stare at each other, afraid that the latter would attack them shamelessly. The goddess of luck and goddess of misfortune also disliked each other. Needless to say, these two girls with long legs and perky buttocks were faking it. The goddess of misfortune seemed to belong to the dark faction, while the goddess of fortune belonged to the light faction. However, the relationship between the two goddesses could not be better. It was just that ordinary people could not understand. Apart from that, there was also the Tempest Master God, the Earth Master God, the Demonic Gold Master God, and so on: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, space, soul, and spirit. Some were reincarnated. Some were autistic and rejected their beliefs. Of course, there were also minor faction overgods similar to the Wildlands overgod. However, no matter how small the faction of the gods was, as long as it was a main god, there would be no weaklings. At the very least, to the saints, they were unsurpassable combat power. At this moment, William had become a tiny ant. He was trembling as he lay on the ground, hoping that the group of overgods would not be able to see him so that he could sneak away. He really had no interest in participating in the battle between these overgods. It could even be said, as long as he did not reach the transcending saint realm, he did not want to meet this group of old friends in his life. Not to mention anything else. His perfect elemental body had a cooldown time of 24 hours. If he fought with the overgods at this time, it would be like asking a chick to challenge a giant eagle. He would definitely die. He did not know if his prayers had been answered, or if it was because of the super luck halo. The group of overgods did not notice him. Even the two goddesses who gave him the luck halo did not notice him. Or rather, even if the two of them noticed his presence, they would ignore him, because their intention was to disrupt the plans of the other overgods. If he could not obtain it, they could not obtain it either. But just as William was wondering why this group of people did not go down, the group of overgods stopped in their tracks. It seemed that when they faced the abyss of the true gods, they were a little fearful. Even if they died, their bodies would not be seriously injured. But their bodies were the gods of their respective factions, and they were the loyal kind. Even if they did not mind, they had to consider the thoughts of their subordinates. So the overgod of light frowned. If there are no accidents, we have broken through 9 seals in a row. The so-called corpse of the true god should be hidden in the abyss in front of us. Yes, why don't you go down and check it out first? It's just a dragon's corpse. I believe you can handle it." The god of darkness sneered coldly. "Humph." The over-god of light laughed coldly. "I am not joking with you. These little worms of the dragon race are quite interesting. None of them are existences that surpass the saint realm, but together with the gnomes, they created a monster that is comparable to a true god." Why did he say it was a monster? It was because other than its soul, the other aspects of the dust dragon had entered the true god realm. It had been forcefully fed to that realm. Its soul and body were not compatible, and it was unable to control such great power. In the end, to prevent itself from becoming a monster that could destroy the world, the king of 10,000 dragons dismembered and sealed it. In the past, even if the overgods saw this, they could not intervene. Because they were in a state of isolation, they could not leave. But now, 99% of the overgods' faith had been removed. They could divert most of their attention to the gods' continent, and they could easily use God's descent. Once the last step was completed, they could descend into the mortal realm with their true bodies. But the decline period of the true Godland occurred once every 100 years. This time, it happened to be the time when someone had entered the saint realm. So even if they could not descend with their true bodies, they had to send a wave of God's descent to warn the light pope. They had to let him understand that the true Godland was a cake for the gods, and that he could only watch. Yes, the Holy Father of Light was indeed still looking at them. He had watched them enter this place, and no one knew what he was thinking. As for what the dust dragon ate to reach the true god realm, the humans, elves, and harpies did not know. However, the gods in the god realm knew it very well. They even knew the details of their plans. Middle of the first era, the dragon race was at its peak. The gnome's only great sage was also the only saint of the gnomes. He told the dragon race his judgment, which was how to reach the true god realm. The dragon race saint naturally did not believe him. Their strongest was only at the peak of the saint realm. He had not even reached the saint realm. To hell with the true god realm. But the gnome great sage was a despicable person. He could be tricked. In addition, the king of the 10,000 dragons was a lazy dust dragon with 4 attributes: space, time, and spirit. His strength was unfathomable. Dragon kings at the pinnacle of the sage plane were no match for him at all. They were no match for him at all. He was the master of the era. Not only was he powerful, but he was also arrogant. Under the gnome great sage's constant brainwashing, he slowly had the idea of surpassing the saint realm and becoming a true god. Actually, the gnome great sage's suggestion was very interesting. That was, as long as he had all the attributes, he could undergo a qualitative change and become a true god. All attributes here were not all attributes of Moses. From his previous life to this one, Moses had yet to understand the difference between luck and misfortune. Let's put it this way. Moses' full attributes were bestowed by the heavens. He only lacked luck and misfortune. If she could comprehend these 2 attributes, she would naturally reach the heavens in a single step. But looking at the results of his 2 lives, luck and misfortune were obviously very difficult for MOMO. But the dragon race was different. The dragon race of the first era had all the attributes. It was all-encompassing. The gnome great sage said that as long as he devoured the dragon crystals of all the attributes, he would eventually become a true dragon king. Sage king, god king, true god. Hence, from the middle of the first era to the end, the king of the 10,000 dragons, who had been trapped in the saint realm, could not take it anymore. He chose to become an executioner. At that time, he had a high status and was very powerful. In addition, there were many elemental and metal dragon kings. He did not care if 1 or 2 died. There are even sage dragon kings who offered their dragon crystals for him to devour, hoping that he would become a true sage king. But some dragons were different. Fairy dragons, luck, moon dragons, misfortune, and all kinds of extremely rare dragon kings. They were the first generation of the dragon race. They were the first dragons of a certain attribute. They did not have any descendants to inherit their talents. They did not want to die for the king of the 10,000 dragons' ambition. They did not want his greed to lead to the complete decline of the dragon race. Hence, in a situation where communication was not possible, fists became the truth. The dragon race's civil war was born. This was a war that lasted for thousands of years. In the end, as the dragons fell one after another, the rare dragon kings were sacrificed and sacrificed one after another. The dust dragon had finally completed his mission. He devoured all the dragon crystals of all attributes. Originally, the civil war had ended. Even if the dragon race was greatly weakened, as long as the dust dragon reached this realm, the dragon race could rise again. But the Rainbow Dragon King's soul had a trick up his sleeve. He hid his soul in the dragon crystal and gave it a fatal blow when it devoured all the dragon crystals at that moment. After the dusk dragon devoured all the dragon crystals, it turned into a giant egg that was 10,000 meters tall. But there was a problem with its soul. Until hundreds of years later, the true God had descended. At the same time, the true God had fallen. On the first day of the myriad dragon king's birth, he took a deep look at the land and casually created the Dragon Valley. Then he split his body into two and imprisoned them on the Dream and Impasse continents. Then he formed layers of seals on them to prevent his leaking power of laws from destroying the entire continent. That was what happened. As for the Goblin Great Sage, was he trying to trap the dragon race to give the goblins a chance to rise? Or was he really selflessly contributing? No one knew, because at the same time, the Goblin Great Sage was also crushed by the king of the 10,000 dragons. The Radiant Master God was just like a narrator as he said those words. With a swing of his hand, he slammed the entire cliff into the deep abyss. He wanted to test out if that half-corpse of a true god was dead or alive. Why didn't he use his skills? What if he woke up? That would be so scary. As for the prince, he was currently lying on a rock and falling rapidly. His mind was filled with nothing but question marks. Chapter 667. William sprawled on the rock and fell into the abyss. As he descended faster and faster, he felt the pressure above his head getting heavier and heavier. It was so heavy that he could not breathe. The authority of a true god, or rather, the corpse of a true god, could not be easily humiliated. When he reached the bottom of the abyss, he would be crushed to a pulp by the huge pressure, unless he used the perfect elemental body. But there was a cooldown. He could not use it now, especially when the Radiant Chief God had narrated the story of the king of 10,000 dragons just like a narrator. William did not know if he should drink some of Little Black's essence blood or not. He was not afraid of not having the inheritance. He was afraid of the sudden appearance of the inheritance. For example, if the Dragon King intended to pass all his endowments to his descendants, what should he do? William did not have the ability to devour everything. He would definitely be overwhelmed by the countless endowments. Actually, William had more or less understood the method to enter the true God realm. There were two methods. Controlling all the elements would result in a qualitative change and allow him to become a true god. But it was obvious. Besides the dusk dragon that could devour everything, no one else could do this. The second method. One method could connect all methods. If one was lucky enough, he might be able to reach the end with only one element endowment. At the last moment, he could comprehend all the endowments and become a true god. By now, virtually all of the sovereigns had chosen this path. However, they didn't mind obtaining the 10,000 Dragon King's legacy and reaching the heavens in a single step. No, I'm going to die if I hesitate any longer. William hesitated for a long time. As he continued to descend, his body continued to crumble. If he did not have the invincible golden body, he would have been dead. But he persevered. Besides the Lord of Light's bones, there was not a trace of flesh left on his body. At this moment, he was thousands of meters above the ground. He glanced at the huge corpse beneath his feet. He took out the dust dragon's blood essence and gulped it down. But at this moment, he did not know if it was because he was too close. The aura of the true god's corpse suddenly rose. The rocks that William was crawling on turned into powder. His body was also turning into ashes at an extremely fast speed. His internal organs were also disappearing. His recovery ability was not of much use. Even the life potion was useless. But at the same time, the dusk dragon's blood essence fused into his body without any hindrance. Wherever the dragon clan's blood essence passed, his body would no longer be corroded. In fact, it would even receive some kind of indescribable blessing, allowing his body to recover at a strange speed. Ding dong, ding dong. The notifications kept ringing. His Royal Highness did not have the time to look at the information panel. His eyes were glued to the main HP bar, afraid that he would die. Of course, if he really died, it was not that he could not be revived. He still had this soul tool, which was hidden in the world tree. It was just that his main god skeleton would be wasted, and he would have to King cultivate it again. Who knew how much of his talent source could be preserved? As time went by, William did not know when he landed at the edge of the giant dragon's corpse. He was right near the head of the Dragon King. He could only feel himself getting more and more dizzy. The information panel kept popping up, but he was getting more and more dazed. He could not even hear the so-called ding-dong sounds anymore. Next, he fell into a coma, but he didn't know. He had now become an egg, a human-shaped egg wrapped in a mass of primal chaos. On the cliff, the gods looked down at the bottomless abyss beneath their feet. Many of them frowned. They did not expect the true god's corpse to have such a strong aura. Even a falling stone would cause a reaction from a true god's corpse. If they had used a more aggressive attack, it would have caused a greater commotion. The most important thing was they did not know if the Dragon King was really dead. They only knew that the Dragon King had split his body into two and sealed it completely. Could it be said that if the corpse was not split, and if it was put together, there was a possibility of revival? Nobody knew how powerful a true god was. But they were already here. They had to go and take a look, right? The god of light and the others made up their minds. Since they were in the state of God's descent, even if they died, it would only be their subordinates who died. They could not withstand too much damage. Hence, the 13 god lords decided to go down and investigate. But at this moment, a ray of white light flashed. The Supreme Pontiff of Light had arrived beside the gods. The other god lords looked at this uninvited guest. They did not expect him to dare to come. But the most unexpected thing was the Supreme Pontiff of Light did not care about their gazes. He just glanced coldly at the bottomless abyss of the true gods and said to them, "Are you sure you want to go down? Are you sure you're not just trying to hold me back? Think carefully. If you want to go down, I will definitely go down as well. And in your current state, I can fight 100 of you alone." The Supreme Pontiff of Light seemed to be speaking arrogantly. But the 13 god lords all stopped in their tracks and looked at the young Supreme Pontiff of Light with various expressions. Was this saint crazy? Not crazy, because what he said was the truth. Actually, in the entire God's continent, no one knew better than the gods how powerful the Supreme Pontiff of Light was. This was the #1 saint who had borne the burden of many eras. Even though he had only cultivated for a short period of time, he was not weaker than the old god lords. It could even be said that he was the god lord of time. Not only did he have great luck, but he also had many incredible abilities. The most important thing was, a while ago, the gods suddenly received a piece of news. That was the name of the Supreme Pontiff of Light. Mingyu Hao. This was a 3-word name. There was no surname. Or rather, no one knew his real surname. The name sounded very strange. But in the mythological era, the names of the elves, the winged race, and the humans were basically one-word names. The first saint of the elves was called Ming. The first saint of the winged race was called Yu. The first saint of the humans was called Hao. The 3 saints of the elves, the winged race, and the humans were born about 3,000 years apart. The elves were the earliest, the winged race in the middle, and the humans the last. But after these 3 saints entered the saint state, they all died in the hands of the gods because they did not want to enslave the other races with the gods. And now, the name of the Supreme Pontiff of Light, TSK. No one would believe that the group of god lords did not have any ulterior motives. They even thought that the person in front of them was a type of god. It was just that his state was very strange. If they really had to give the Supreme Pontiff of Light a surname, then he should be called Samsara. Therefore, their fear of the Supreme Pontiff of Light was far more exaggerated than what others thought. Many of the god lords were silent. They quietly looked at the abyss. The Supreme Pontiff of Light also looked down with a cold smile. It was very obvious. They had all compromised. This was the current situation. If the 13 god lords still wanted to go down, the Supreme Pontiff of Light would definitely kill them. The 13 god lords' clones and faction gods would definitely die. Moreover, they would also suffer some injuries. This would delay the arrival of their true bodies and cause more changes in the gods' continent. But the 13 god lords did not go down. Naturally, the Supreme Pontiff of Light did not dare to go down either. After all, the former's original purpose was to delay the Supreme Pontiff of Light and prevent him from obtaining the inheritance of the true God. As such, the Supreme Pontiff of Light did not dare to go down rashly. If he wanted to obtain benefits from the corpse of the true God, he had to kill the 13 god lords first. Otherwise, if he was disturbed, he would definitely be seriously injured. As such, both sides were in a complete stalemate, and this state would probably last until the period of decline of the true god's corpse. Time continued to pass. The Supreme Pontiff of Light and the 13 god lords stared at each other on top of the cliff. Some of them were anxious to go down and find out, but cautiousness won over impulsiveness. They could wait until their true bodies descended before doing so, or they could obtain the inheritance of the true God. More than 20 days passed by slowly like this. In the next moment, the aura of the true God's corpse soared into the sky again. The God Lords did not dare to go near it. As the aura became stronger and stronger, the Supreme Pontiff of Light and the others chose to retreat. They continuously retreated until they were out of the 9 seals. Then, they saw the 9 seals gather together again. At this moment, they looked at each other. At the same time, they left the core region of the true God's corpse. The Supreme Pontiff of Light left the impassable continent. The 13 god lords dispelled the state of God's descent. But each of them had some tricks up their sleeves to make the God's descent feel better. But when the goddess of luck and the goddess of misfortune returned to the celestial realm, they immediately looked at each other. The goddess of luck was a little bewildered. She said, "If I remember correctly, the god of light casually slapped the lord of the city of dawn down. Did he not come back?" The goddess of misfortune nodded obediently. "We're done for." The goddess of luck pulled a long face. "Moses will definitely settle the score with us. In the mythological era, he was not afraid of anyone. We caused the death of his little boyfriend. He will definitely come looking for trouble. Rogers of luck and the goddess of life will also come looking for trouble. My God, if I knew that the Supreme Pontiff of Light would be so reckless, I wouldn't have to do this." The goddess of misfortune held her sister's hand tightly and comforted her. "It's all right. He's not dead yet. As long as his super luck halo doesn't disappear, we will continue to bless him and let him live as long as possible. But he is loitering around the true God's corpse." "I'm not confident." The goddess of luck was speechless. She did not know how William had survived until now. But no matter what, she had to continue to bless him. Perhaps the super luck halo was the key reason why William could survive until now. As long as he did not die, as long as Moses did not explode, the goddess of magic would not explode. When they descended to the mortal world in the future, they would not encounter too much trouble. It could not be helped. Although the group of female gods had formed a group of close female friends, once the goddess had a man, she would not care much about her close female friends. As for William, he was still an egg. He had lost consciousness. He did not feel anything. It was as if he had fallen asleep. As for whether the Dragon King was dead or not, nobody knew, because the right eye of the half-head was still tightly shut. Who knew if the golden pupil was still shining? Chapter 668. 3 months had passed. William was nowhere to be seen, but his sage position was still there. This meant that he was not dead yet. Moses made some deductions and did not detect any fatal danger. Hence, he did not intend to enter the impassable continent to find out. Until now, the goddess of magic had become an advanced sage and was working hard to reach the peak of the sage position. Lautner had also arranged many matters in the City of Dawn in an orderly manner. William might not be around for a long time, but it did not mean that the City of Dawn could not function. As long as the professionals in the city did not forget their original intentions and remained loyal to the city lord, the City of Dawn would continue to develop steadily. But the rune mages and the others were dumbfounded. They had waited at the intersection point of the core region until the last moment, but William did not appear. Of course, they did not believe that William was dead. They thought that he had left in advance. But when they returned to the small town in the alternate dimension, they still did not hear William coming out. In the end, they used all kinds of communication methods. Even after leaving the impassable continent, they still did not see William. This time, they were a little nervous. It was not that they were greedy, but that William was really dead. His family of 4 was the reincarnation of 3 main gods. If they were not careful, they might strangle them to death. Fortunately, they were not fools. They did not tell others about William's disappearance. Coupled with the deduction of the rune mages, they finally confirmed that William was trapped in the core region of the gods. He was just not dead. As a result, the other 4 could only think that William had obtained an opportunity and stayed there. When would he come out? Oh, perhaps it would take 100 years. After all, the core region opened once every 100 years. By the time William came out, the main gods would have descended for a long time. Perhaps when the main gods entered the core region, they could kill William and come out. The City of Dawn's plan to establish branches in the 7 continents was also progressing in an orderly manner. With a reputation accumulated over 5 versions, the players were familiar with the City of Dawn. They also liked the benefits of being in a neutral faction. So now, there were 13 million players in the City of Dawn. That was 1/5 of the total number of players in the Gods' continents. There were 2 million more players. But this was basically the limit. It wasn't that the City of Dawn wasn't powerful enough. It was just that no matter how powerful the City of Dawn was, the players had their own ambitions. They liked to join different camps and fight against each other. However, there were a total of 13 million players. Even if they exchanged all their skills in one go, they would still be able to provide William with a huge amount of experience points after entering the instance dungeon every 7 days. In just a short span of 3 months, the prince, who was in a coma, had no idea how much EXP he had received. Of course, the most important thing for the players in version 5.0 was still the national war. Many liver emperors had already become grandmasters. The liver emperor was fine, but his equipment might not be good. However, when the professional players and players stepped into the legendary realm, they would be able to defeat hundreds or even thousands of people on the battlefield after spending money or using various methods to exchange for a Grandmaster legendary set. Because the flying speed of a Grandmaster was very fast, it was far beyond the reach of an advanced professional. As long as they weren't targeted by too many launchers, Grandmaster players were basically the top dogs on the battlefield, each stronger than the last. As for how to become stronger, paywalls would make you stronger. As long as you had enough paywalls, professional players would be nothing compared to your Forbidden Scrolls. Other than continuing to fight against the dark creatures, the players from the 7 continents went to the battlefield and killed each other on the resource islands. The curtains of the Great Naval War had begun. There were too many regular fleets that had turned into pirates. As long as they put on a skeleton flag, everyone would be pirates. There were even navies from the same continent who fought against each other because they had put up a skeleton flag. The result was self-evident. At first, they thought that the other party was a pushover and would definitely not be able to defeat their regular fleets. In the end, both sides would suffer losses. When everyone put on their camp flags, they were instantly dumbfounded. How could they attack their allies? Anyway, there were all kinds of things happening on the sea. Players robbed NPCs. There were countless cases of NPCs robbing players. The Frost Empire. Old Man Kieran had successfully entered the Sage State. But now, there were people who entered the Sage State every month in the 7 continents. Therefore, this news did not attract much attention. Only some forces were envious that the Frost Empire had a time sage. As his disciple, Old Leather represented the City of Dawn to send 1,000 drops of life potion as a congratulatory gift. Teacher, my training speed is fast. Now, I've also entered the legendary state. I'm only one level lower than you. After eating and drinking at the sage enthronement ceremony, Old Leather went to Old Man Kieran and bragged. Uffed, with your training speed, I could be 1,000 times faster than you. Old Man Kieran rolled his eyes, but on account that Old Leather was his disciple, he still gave him a sage time scroll. Then, he tricked Old Leather into leaving. Swoosh! An extremely weak spatial fluctuation appeared. A figure appeared beside Kieran. He was a warlock sage from the Holy Empire. His appearance was that of an advanced sage, but he had torn apart the space and traveled from the middle continent to the legendary continent without attracting the attention of any sages. This was obviously not an ordinary feat. Kieran did not show any surprise. He just glanced at his old friend and said calmly, "You're already at the peak of the sage state. Why are you still hiding so deeply? Get lost." As if you didn't hide your realm. The space mage curled his lips. Who was this Kieran? He was the Lord God of Time. He had been reincarnated in the legendary continent more than 1,000 years ago. What about his training speed? To put it bluntly, 30 years was enough for him to reach the sage state. Therefore, during the remaining time, he had been changing his timeline to mislead others into thinking that he was an ordinary time mage. In particular, the time mage had a special characteristic. That was the ability to speed up or slow down time, allowing one's cultivation speed to be faster or slower. As a result, the Lord God of Space could not see the true strength of his old friend. But he was sure that this old man had not reached the supreme sage state. "Why did you suddenly come to see me today?" Kieran raised his eyebrows. He was one of the gods, but only his old friend, the Lord God of Space, knew his name. No one else knew about this. This was also the key reason why he had hidden it so deeply, yet no one had ever noticed it. The Lord God of Space curled his lips. The God of Light and the others came to the impassable continent some time ago, intending to snatch the inheritance of the true God. In the end, they were stopped by the Holy Father of Light. I used the secret space technique to see clearly, but they actually did not notice me. They are so stupid. Oh, the Holy Father of Light seems to have sensed me, but he is not proficient in the space rules, so he could not find my location. Oh, you know about this, right? I know a little. The sages who returned from the impassable continent have more or less talked about it. But what I know even more is that we don't need to care about the God of Light and the others. Kieran waved his hand. He could not be bothered to listen to the stories of the God of Light and the others. He was completely uninterested. Then what do you plan to care about? Scarab One, God of the Underworld? Or Roger's divine luck? Kieran squinted his eyes. Indeed, I want to know who Scarab One is now. I want to know if the great goblin sage is dead or not. I want to know why, at the end of the Elven era, even if the world trees exploded, there should have been a lot of remnants of the world trees left behind. Why did the mountain-like world trees all disappear after that explosion? The elves could only suffer in silence. They didn't even have the water of life to drink. Especially, I want to know why the devouring inheritance was left until now. The Lord God of Space opened his mouth. You did not reincarnate that early. Isn't this all just your guess? As he spoke, the Space Master God went silent. That was because from the first era to the second era, it was as though there was a gigantic hand hidden in the dark that was constantly plucking at the strings of the zither, turning all the races in the world into his puppets. This was especially true for the first and second era masters. They were the ones who had been tricked to death. As for the third era master of the human race, he could only say that he was extremely lucky, because at the end of the third era, too many gods reincarnated, and the hidden figures seemed to have disappeared. But the god-slaying temple's method of devouring the god's origin, it had existed since the mythological era. However, the names of the two were different, and there were some changes in nature. It used to be called the God's Origin Replacement Technique, used to help the gods absorb faith, but now it was called the Devouring God's Origin Technique. As for the god who created the God's Origin Replacement Technique, he was not a Lord God, but the last god of the gods, called the God of Devouring. Logically speaking, if he had awakened earlier, there would have been a place for him in the Lord God's position. But he had awakened too late. The magical crystals in the God's continent had been used up, and everyone had to rely on faith to become a Lord God, especially when there was already order among the gods. And even when Kieran had become a Lord God, the god of devouring was just born. And when he was just born, he was just a small legend. God knew how much trash he had eaten before he could step into the god realm. But even though he had become a god, he was still the weakest among the gods. So from the beginning of the mythological era to the end, he was a very ordinary guy. Only the divine spirit origin replacement technique attracted the attention of the other gods. But because this method was too evil, the god of devouring was also killed by someone. But from the first era to the second era, and then to the god-slaying temple in the third era, no matter how one looked at it, the god of devouring did not seem to be completely dead. The path to becoming a true god was very clear. Kieran had always suspected that the god of devouring was not dead at all, but had used some kind of method to escape and solve the problem of faith. Then he started a plan in the dragon era. But who is he? Kieran raised his eyebrows, and many faces flashed past his eyes, and he fell into deep thought for a long time. And this deep thought took more than 10 hours. Chapter 669. A Dream of 3,000 Years. William did not know how long he had slept, but as a sage, he could feel that he had slept for a long time. Of course, 3,000 years was too much. 3 months was more like it. If 3,000 years had passed, the cucumbers would have rotted. Before he fell into a deep sleep, he vaguely felt that he was wrapped in a layer of sticky substance. But when he woke up, there was nothing around him except for a ferocious and terrifying dragon head beside him. At that moment, William woke up and was no longer in a daze. He could not help but swallow his saliva. He took a few steps back in an attempt to distance himself from the dragon head. Fortunately, he discovered that the Dragon King was not alive. He heaved a sigh of relief and carefully checked the attribute panel. Gosh, I was shocked. William inhaled a breath of cold air. He saw thousands, tens of thousands, and even hundreds of thousands of notifications. Through these notifications, he vaguely understood what he had experienced in the past 3 months. The explanation could be described in 2 words. Become stronger. The explanation could be described in 3 words. Become very strong. The explanation could be described in 4 words. He was awesome. He had thought that after devouring Blackie's blood essence, he might be able to inherit the true God's inheritance, such as all attributes and endowments. Of course, he had also considered 2 possibilities. 1, he had a digitized body. After the energy entered his body, it was likely to exist in the form of experience points or in some other form. He would not explode. 2, he was already a part of the God's world. He did not dare to guarantee that he would still have a digitized body. It was just that he had a digitized interface. The energy would cause him to explode, and he could only be reborn in the world tree. He had inherited some inheritances, but not all attributes. And what exactly did he obtain? Bones of the true gods. Thunder of the true gods. These 2 inheritances existed in the form of endowments in William's endowment column. But the introduction behind the former was a bunch of question marks. The second endowment had digitized information. It was obvious. The true God's realm had already surpassed the computing power of the mastermind. In other words, the true God represented the only way to break through the control of the mastermind. The mastermind would not be able to impose any restrictions on the user, and data would not represent everything. Talent, true God lightning. You possess an inextinguishable true God lightning. You have obtained the seed of the path to becoming a true God. Friendly tip, completely control it, fuse with it, and you will be God. William raised his eyebrows. The mainframe was still full of nonsense. As long as it could digitize something, it would give it something. He had a thought. Swoosh. A ball of lightning flashing with a purplish-red light floated in front of him in a corporeal state. It was like a poke ball, and he could not sense any threat from it. However, he could sense the boundless energy within it. His Royal Highness reached out and held it. In an instant, he entered the state of the perfect elemental body. This wasn't William using his endowment skill. but an ability that came with holding the thunderball. Meanwhile, he could also make this lightning ball transform into any weapon, armor, and other shapes. This thing was simply an all-purpose weapon. It was an item with explosive destructive power. William could feel the power within. It was the kind of power that could make one forget oneself. It was the kind of power that could tear the heavens and the earth with one's hands and control everything. However, it didn't last for long. The energy in his body was depleted. William hurriedly released his hand and swallowed it into his body. He allowed the true God Thunderball to fuse into his spine. At this moment, he understood now. This true God, Thunder, was equivalent to the final point of the Thunder Rule. It contained everything about the Thunder Rule. With him, William could use him to slowly step into the true God realm. After all, there were two conditions to step into the true God realm. One law to connect to all laws, or one could comprehend the laws of all elements. Even if one was a sage, one could reach the true God realm. But what was the difficulty of connecting to all laws? If one could not comprehend one law, how could one connect to all laws? But now that he had inherited the true God Thunder Rule of the Dragon King, it was equivalent to solving the most difficult step of connecting to all laws. Now that he had become stronger step by step, sooner or later, he would step into the true God realm. But then again, as long as I accumulate experience points, I will step into the true God realm sooner or later, right? The corners of William's mouth twitched. This seemed to be the case. Unless there was a prerequisite mission to step into the true God realm, such as obtaining a true God law. But no matter what, he seemed to have completed the prerequisite mission to step into the true God realm. But there was one thing. When he obtained the true God Thunder Rule, this core region would not produce the Thunder Rule fruit. Because the Dragon King had given the Thunder Rule to him, William narrowed his eyes. This situation is too obvious. The Rune Mages, the goddess of luck, and the goddess of misfortune know that I entered the core region. If they come to this region in the future and do not see the Thunder Rule fruit, they will easily know that I have inherited something. If they tell others about this, I will definitely become the enemy of all Thunder-type professionals. But then again, will everyone be able to inherit a true God law when they come here? No. It was not easy for them to inherit the true God law. William had devoured the blood essence of Xiaohe. When his body turned into ashes, the blood essence of the Dusk Dragon fused with his body. That was how he had the aura of the Dusk Dragon. But it was not easy for a Super Sage or a Lord God to inherit the true God law. William carefully sized up the Dragon King in front of him. He could feel the pressure, but because he emitted the aura of the Dusk Dragon, the pressure was not fatal. He could sense the immense energy in the Dragon King's body. It seemed to be endless, and it could easily destroy a Super Sage. He felt that it was as easy for a true god to kill a Super Sage. It was like a legendary expert killing a village dog. TSK. His corpse is not rotten. The huge dragon scales are still shining. They are comparable to a Lord God weapon. Wow, look at the torn body. It has not healed, and the blood is still motionless. It is still emitting divinity. Oh my! Gulp. William circled the corpse and sized it up. He could not help but swallow his saliva. He was already here. Would it be good if he returned empty-handed? This would be a blow to his courage and boldness. Who was the Lord of the City of Dawn? How could there be a person who came to someone else's grave and did not leave with something? Therefore, William slowly approached the corpse. He felt an inexplicable pressure that prevented him from approaching. He immediately used the Beast God necklace and transformed into a Dusk Dragon. The next moment, the William version of the Dusk Dragon immediately knelt on the ground and roared in the language of the Dusk Dragon. "Oh my God, ancestor, I am your descendant. Give me a piece of your dragon's scale and bless your descendants." Thump, thump, thump. He cowed out. What? Was he talking about dignity? Was he talking about dignity in front of a true god? Wasn't that nonsense? Especially now that he was a Dusk Dragon, a proper Dusk Dragon. It was only natural for him to worship his ancestors. Even his father couldn't stop him now. 10 minutes passed. Perhaps William's dusk dragon had touched the heavens and earth. The suppressive aura of the Dragon King gradually dissipated, allowing William to approach the huge dragon scale that was about to fall off. The prince did not hesitate either. He strode forward, flapped his wings, and walked over. He used his teeth and 2 claws to grab the scales tightly. He used almost all of his strength to pull them off. However, just when the suppressive aura appeared again, William knelt on the ground in tears. "Ancestor, I am unfilial. I did not know where you died. Now that I know, I will definitely come to visit you in the future, but I'm still not strong enough. I can't even surpass saints. Those chief gods are so evil. They've surrounded and blocked me in all sorts of ways, preventing me from seeing you. If I hadn't used a forbidden technique and expended my own potential to barge in, I wouldn't have been able to see you even once in my life. Give me 2 tons of blood essence for me to eat. It will help me recover my potential." The eyelids of the Dragon King twitched slightly. William did not notice this message. He continued to narrate how he had suffered over the years. He had been tortured, imprisoned, and bullied by his fellow dragons. He was in tears as he spoke. That was it. After chanting for a full hour, the suppressive aura dissipated again. William approached the torn wound and took some blood of a true god. As for the blood essence, apologies. There was no distinction between blood essence and essence in a true god's body. When William saw this, he did not stand on ceremony. He used his dragon claws to take out a magic bottle that was the size of a water tank. He was about to take some of the blood. At this moment, William vaguely sensed a suppressive aura. Fortunately, the Dragon King had determined that William was his descendant. He had allowed William to do such an unreasonable thing. In the end, William filled the magic bottle with the size of a water tank. He wanted to obtain more benefits. Swish! The space changed. He left the place where the true god had fallen and appeared not far from the small town in the alternate dimension. TSK, so stingy. William's mouth twitched. He transformed back into his human form. But he did not know that. After the Dragon King performed these actions, he fell into a deep sleep. If no one disturbed him, it would be difficult for him to wake up again. Was the Dragon King dead? No, but his soul had been split into 2. One was in the impasse continent, and the other was in the dream continent. His remnant soul did not have a true consciousness. Everything was instinctive. Fortunately, he could distinguish the aura of his descendant. Otherwise, William would have been crushed by his aura. When would this dimension open again? Perhaps just when the Lord gods were attacking. In the end, the 10,000 Dragon King couldn't handle so many enemies. All he had left was a corpse and a remnant of his soul. If there were no accidents, the true god laws in his body would be snatched by the Lord gods and transcending saints. Chapter 670. William left the core area of the fallen god. He did not go to the alternate dimension town, nor did he meet with any sages or gods. Instead, he flew to the edge of the impassable continent. He found the weakest part of the barrier and tore it apart. He passed through a tunnel filled with spatial turbulence. Once again, the prince saw the boundless sea and the bright and beautiful sky. He was in a good mood. Then, William crushed the teleportation scroll that Moses had given him. When the dimension vortex appeared, he entered it. He returned to the teleportation hall in the City of Dawn. William had returned. The news spread throughout the City of Dawn in a short period of time. Some of the spies in the City of Dawn were informed of the return of the Lord of the City of Dawn. This included the Rune Mages, the Red Sea Emperor, and others. They heaved a sigh of relief when they received the news. Although they were curious about how William had come out and what benefits he had obtained, they did not ask him. "Prince William, it's me, Changli Jioga. I'm your lackey. Have you forgotten about me?" Changli Jioga was at the entrance of the teleportation hall. When he saw William walking past him, he immediately rushed up to him. He wanted to flirt with William. Yes. Aren't you that?" Changli Jioga was shocked. His affinity for William had not changed, but he had forgotten about him. Did he have to go overboard? "Prince William, you've changed. Ever since you became a sage, you didn't want a grandmaster like me anymore." Fortunately, William could not be bothered to joke with him. He gave him an A+ level mission, and Changli Jyoga led the other professional players to cause trouble. Oh, Changli Jyoga and Xiao Ayan seemed to be together. As expected, after Chu Liuqiu left, Changli Jyoga became the captain of the battle team. He started to have fun. He even managed to win over Xiao Ayan. TSK. If I didn't have a bottom line, I would have made you a cuckold. William raised his eyebrows and turned to leave. After he left, the players on the street started discussing. By the way, where has His Highness been recently? A player on the street asked curiously. I don't know. Anyway, I don't see Prince William. I think he has gone to find a goddess. That's not true. Maybe it's the goddess who insists on keeping His Highness. You have to have confidence in His Highness' looks. Uncute Lemon patted the sword in his hand. Cough, cough, cough. Be careful. His Highness turned around just now, and the way he looked at you is weird. However, I've heard from other places that there's a place called the Impassable Continent in the world of gods. It seems that many main gods have descended recently. Perhaps your Highness went there? Are you serious? Even a main god has descended. Wouldn't her Highness be wasting her time if she went? Aqua Verdant asked, confused. Who knows? Anyway, His Highness hasn't died yet. I don't know if he went to the Impassable Continent or not, but I know that he must be going to the Magic Tower now. William also raised his eyebrows. This person was right, but where he went, it was none of their business. All of you must be bored out of your mind. You have your eyes on the God's continent, and you're really arrogant. Sigh. It was a pity that he couldn't use a large-scale attack to reduce the affinity between the players. After all, the players were still his subordinates. Once he became a true god, he could bully them. When the prince arrived at the Magic Tower, he glanced at his attribute panel. His experience bar had long been filled to the brim. The long string of numbers was simply too eye-catching. That was right. The City of Dawn had established branches in the 7 continents. In the past 3 months, the number of players had skyrocketed, and so had his experience points. In a short span of 3 months, he could increase his level by 30 and become an advanced sage. That was basically a guarantee. The 10-year update of version 5.0 would definitely allow him to become a transcendent sage. As for the experience bar for becoming a true god from a transcendent sage, don't ask. Even if you asked, you wouldn't know. William had a headache. As for the experience points, there was no need for him to level up. He wanted to accumulate a big move and become a transcendent sage. In particular, he was already feared when he was an intermediate sage. If he quickly became an advanced sage or a peak sage, he might be killed by the main gods. As for Odin's avatar, of course, he would obediently collect faith. He wanted to reach the peak of the advanced god level as soon as possible before becoming a main god. At this moment, Molly was flipping through a magic book. She had already sensed William's aura. When she discovered that she was the first person William came to see after he returned, she happily threw the book away and jumped on William's body. Then, she kissed William's handsome face. Poof, I missed you. I'm finally back. I've been wanting to go to the Impassable Continent to take a look, William chuckled. His hands were about to move restlessly, but Moses suddenly jumped down from his body and sniffed his body with his little nose. Then, he looked at him cautiously. Tell me, what's up with your lucky halo? Oh, no wonder you haven't returned for so long. Is it because you're having too much fun in the Impassable Continent? Come, tell me, what did those 2B asterisk cheese show you? The more Molly spoke, the angrier she became. She clenched her small fists and wished that she could slap William back to the Impassable Continent. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He thought that Molly's nose was too good. Why was it the same as his mother's? William glanced at the information panel. TSK. There was still 1 month left for the Super Luck Halo. The goddess of luck and goddess of misfortune were afraid that William would die in the land of the perished gods, so they gave him the Luck Halo every month. But even though he came out early, the Luck Halo on his body had not disappeared. To be honest, without the Super Luck Halo, William might not have been able to return safely from the perished continent. Hence, he shrugged helplessly and explained his experience in the Impassable Continent to Moses. 2 hours passed. The goddess of magic looked at William in disbelief. She even made a very excessive request. Let me see, let me see. Good brother Molly, I beg you. Moses was wearing a snow-white magic robe. She half knelt beside William and pursed her lips as she pleaded, especially her pitiful eyes. Basically, as long as one was a man, one would not be able to refuse such a request. But her request was really too much. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He refused with difficulty. It's not that I don't want to let you see, but what if you want to use it after you see it? Will you not give it to me? Molly blinked her large eyes and revealed an obedient and cute look. William took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, Okay, I'll let you see. Swish. He cut open the flesh on William's arm. William's true God's bones were exposed. The bones were crystal clear without any impurities. They looked as if they were made of countless rules. Moses did not stand on ceremony. Her eyes flashed with runes as she tried to see through William's bones. She even took out a small divine blade and tried to dig out a piece of bone. Crack. The divine blade shattered. Molly was heartbroken. William did not control his recovery ability, and the wound healed instantly. At this moment, he consoled Moses. Don't think about removing the bones from my body. I used the heaven saber to slash it, but it didn't leave a mark. The bones of the true God are really hard. You'll sleep in your castle, and I'll sleep in my magic tower. Moses turned around and furiously flipped through his magic book. He did not know if he could concentrate. But William calmly took out a jet-shaped magic bottle and frivolously said, The blood of the true gods. It's not much. It's just a jar. I wanted to give it to my wife, but she doesn't want me anymore. Forget it. William stood up and was about to leave. Brother. Molly suddenly turned her head and hugged William's thigh. Do you want it? Yes. Molly nodded obediently. You know what I mean. William laughed. Molly raised her head and glanced at him. 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days and 3 nights a few days later. William walked out of the magic tower, feeling refreshed. He had given half of the jar of the true God's blood to Moses to study. He hoped that she could improve further. As for the other half, it was left for his companions who had advanced to the sage state. As for himself, William asked Moses to purify the blood, leaving only the true God's blood that contained the Thunder Law. He hid it in his body and used it as a trump card. It had to be said, if he used all kinds of techniques and burned his father's blood essence, he could unleash the power of a sage for 10 seconds. But if he used the true God's blood essence, TSK, he did not know how much longer he could last. Even if he reached the sage state, he would be able to achieve the same effect. In other words, he had used up his father's blood essence. He did not need to hide the remaining 6 drops of blood essence. In the future, when he encountered a difficult enemy, he could unleash the power of a sage and immediately defeat the enemy. There were many uses for the true God's bone. Among them, it could allow him to withstand the pressure brought by the battle prowess of a transcendent saint, and it could also prevent him from being injured by losing his limbs. As for the other benefits, they were all question marks. William had not studied them thoroughly. In the following period of time, William could finally rest for a while. As time passed, 1 month, 2 months, half a year, the 3rd year of version 5.0 had begun. This was the spring when all things were revived and the animals were in heat. William came to the Dawn College to give a lecture as usual. The audience was filled with monks from the Dawn College. Some graduates, exchange students, and even some professionals of the city of Dawn were listening from afar. Next, the lecture that lasted for 3 hours was over. The prince also opened the transmission scroll that had been ringing nonstop just now. He read the messages, even the last message. William's expression changed slightly. Gosh, Lancelot had been captured. Had the silly Viscount of Darkness finally lost control? Was he going to play the binding game? Chapter 671. Lancelot was taken away. After William recovered from his nervousness, he didn't appear to be too anxious. He continued to live his life calmly. The experienced Supreme Pontiff of Light, who seemed to understand the personality of the Viscount of Darkness, was not anxious either. As for the God of Light, it was uncertain if he still remembered that he had a son like Lancelot. Hence, The rescue scene that the Viscount of Darkness had imagined did not happen. He was unable to anger the Viscount of Darkness and kill Lancelot. At this moment, in the dark world, the Viscount of Darkness, who had reached the sage state, was executing Lancelot. He used a small whip to whip Lancelot's chest and back. Lancelot's limbs were restrained, and his recovery ability was limited. He could not heal his wounds quickly, and his entire body was bleeding. The burning pain made him very clear-headed. But no matter how the Viscount of Darkness beat and scolded him, he did not say a word. He gritted his teeth and endured the torture. At most, he would glare at the Viscount of Darkness when he was in extreme pain. You can do it. I don't believe that you can endure for the rest of your life. The Viscount of Darkness whipped Lancelot for 7 to 8 hours. Besides Lancelot's handsome face, there was not a single part of his body that was unharmed. But he finally threw away the legendary whip and said fiercely, "I'll let you go when you decide to join the Dark World. If not, you'll be trapped in the Dark World for the rest of your life. You'll be tortured every day and night." With that, he saw that Lancelot did not say a word, so he turned and left. A legendary devil was about to continue beating Lancelot with a small whip, but the Viscount of Darkness slapped him and sent him flying. The legendary devil covered his face in confusion. He did not know what to do. Didn't the Viscount of Darkness say that he would not be able to rest day and night? "I'm carrying out a mission for you, my lord." However, the Viscount of Darkness didn't even use his most evil methods on Lancelot, which were things that he himself had experienced. Why would he need someone else to punish Lancelot? He had been very careful not to damage Lancelot's face. If his subordinates accidentally hit him, wouldn't he be heartbroken? Therefore, the Viscount of Darkness shouted, "Scram! I don't need you to interfere with what I do. Watch him. If he dies, I'll make you beg for death." Yes, the legendary devil shivered and hurriedly knelt down to beg for mercy. Subsequently, the Viscount of Darkness left the torture chamber and went to his palace to sulk. He just couldn't understand. Why was Lancelot so strong? She was even more confused as to why his willpower was so strong. Back then, when he was adopted by the demon Oni father, after experiencing those things, his mentality directly collapsed. He became desperate, angry, disappointed, and even hated everything in the world. But his Lon was different. The Viscount of Darkness believed that even if he were to use such methods on him, he would at most receive disgust and anger from the Viscount of Darkness. However, he would definitely not lose his faith in hope and light. Regarding this point, he was very unhappy. He did not believe that anyone possessed absolute justice and light. However, there was something wrong with his brain. He didn't want to use the most evil method, but he also thought that Lancelot was a hypocrite. He was afraid that using his own method would really cause him to fall into darkness. He was also troubled by the fact that he could not make him fall into darkness. In any case, the Viscount of Darkness was a contradiction. In his mind, the scene of him being abused by the demon father would appear, and then he would imagine Lancelot descending like a god to save him from hell. But every time he thought of this, he knew that this was ultimately just a dream. Hence, he increasingly liked to interfere with Lancelot's rescue operations. In his eyes, so what if Lancelot was a light element professional? The Viscount of Darkness had seen many things and knew that some temple knights were also perverts. They did all sorts of evil. Other than being able to explode with light element battle energy, they were simply demons of the dark world. This also caused him to always believe in one thing. That was that everyone was evil and cruel. It was just that hypocrites used so-called rules and laws to make those cruel people not dare to easily violate the law and rules. Chaos, evil killing. This is what the gods' continent should have. Everything should return to the origin of freedom. A world of hypocrites. Sooner or later, the dark world will swallow you up. The Viscount of Darkness gritted his teeth and sneered. His mind kept bursting with chaotic and disorderly scenes. Conclusion: he was a lunatic. Even after becoming the Lord of Darkness, he was still a Saint Realm lunatic. Dong! It was like the sound of a drop of water falling into a calm surface in a silent state. The Viscount of Darkness' expression changed slightly. He immediately got up and walked into the bedroom, looking at the mirror where a figure had already appeared. The next second, he bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice, "Greetings, my god. What instructions does my god have for me? I heard that you have captured the Son of Light, that Lancelot." The Viscount of Darkness' expression changed slightly. He did not know how this matter had attracted the attention of the God of Darkness. However, he still nodded and said, "Yes, he is now in my hands. Don't kill him. His father is the God of Light, my old friend and rival. Although he can allow the Light Pope to teach Lancelot, and even nurture him into an existence that can contend against him, he will not tolerate you killing him." A series of changes occurred in the Viscount of Darkness' heart. With a malevolent expression, he said, "Fine, I will definitely not let him die. Yes, but the torture must continue. I want to see what kind of mentality the son of the God of Light will have after falling into darkness." The God of Darkness smiled mysteriously and completely disappeared from the mirror. The Viscount of Darkness' expression became uglier and uglier. He could not help but mutter to himself, "Son of God? No wonder he has such backbone. He is really lucky. He was born as the son of the Lord of Light. Then he was taught by a saint. He seems to be a chess piece, but his starting point is above everyone's head. Yes, he is as disgusting as the Lord of the City of Dawn." As soon as he finished speaking, the Viscount of Darkness took out the small leather whip in his hand again and walked towards the torture chamber. Even a mentally ill person like him only had a good impression of Lancelot. Even though the God of Darkness had plotted against him, he did not expect that the Viscount of Darkness would be cruel and perverted to others. He could not bear to use his cruelty on Lancelot. It was not that William did not want to save his good friend. It was mainly because he did not know much about the dark world. In particular, the Viscount of Darkness had become a saint. If he lived in a city with a large number of Dark Lords, he could charge in and start a massacre. He might anger some existences, especially since he did not want to face the God of Darkness. So he wanted to save Lancelot. He had to come up with a plan first. After all, this is an SS-level mission. In order to obtain so much experience, I have to prepare carefully. William raised his eyebrows. Then, he walked into the teleportation portal and arrived at the 10th Dark Outpost. Ursula had been stationed here for many years. He would be the first to receive any news about the Dark World. When they met again, Ursula was leisurely drinking tea while reading the night novels in the God's Continent. F***CK. As a rich and powerful person, his life was simple and boring. He could read the novels in the God's Continent in the Dark World. No one else could enjoy such treatment. Ursula glanced at William and could not help but say, "After so many years, you are still an intermediate sage. Has your training speed finally slowed down?" "Yes." William laughed. "My kidneys have been very weak recently." "Old man, do you have any supplements?" "No, get lost." Ursula's mouth twitched. How could an old virgin like him have such things? "Why are you here? This place is very safe. Are you going to rescue Lancelot?" The corners of William's mouth twitched. "I was just about to say, Lancelot is a member of the Temple of Light. Why don't you rescue him?" Ursula raised his eyebrows. "Everyone has their own fate. Lancelot seems to be very talented, but it's very difficult for him to step into the saint realm. He's too kind and righteous. He firmly believes that all living creatures and animals should be kind and righteous. Of course, this is also because we have taught him wrong. We should not have instilled in him the idea of absolute justice and light. We should not have instilled in him the idea that all living creatures in the world can be saved. In his heart, he believes that devils should be kind. It's just that the environment they live in is different. This is the reason why devils are extremely cruel. But there is good and evil in the world. If there is light, there is darkness. Everything has its opposite. Some races and living creatures are born evil. This is not caused by the environment they live in, but because of his stubborn thinking and his inability to understand many crimes, he has been at the peak of the legendary stage for 6 to 7 years. But he has not been able to become a sage. Now that the Viscount of Darkness has captured him, he will see true evil and perverted. Only then will he be able to become a sage." William was puzzled. He could not help but ask, "Do you really think that the Viscount of Darkness is the most evil and perverted existence in the world?" Oh, that was right. To others, the Viscount of Darkness was the most evil and perverted monster. But he would only show mercy to Lancelot. What a pity. The Pope of Light and Ursula were two silly people. They thought that they understood the Viscount of Darkness very well. Or rather, they believed that since the Viscount of Darkness could become the Viscount of Darkness, he should have the purest darkness, evil, perverted, and cruel. But the facts prove that. The Viscount of Darkness had preserved a trace of kindness. The Pope of Light had allowed Lancelot to be captured by the Viscount of Darkness. This would only make Lancelot think that the Viscount of Darkness had shown mercy to him. Even the most evil and perverted person would have a trace of kindness in his heart. He would definitely believe that all living creatures in the world should be good. It was simple. The two silly people had misunderstood the situation. William pondered for a while and said in a deep voice, "Where is Lancelot being imprisoned? I'll go and rescue him. If you want him to witness true evil and darkness, I'll bring him there. That foolish Viscount of Darkness will not be able to do that." Ursula pondered for a long time. Could it be that he and the Pope of Light had made a mistake? But he still said in a deep voice, "All right, but you have to be careful. He is being imprisoned in the city of evil. It is the capital of the seven devils of darkness, Mortimer." The corners of William's mouth twitched. Were you sure that it was not because the Pope of Light did not want to rescue him? What a pity. It was the seven devils of darkness again. William gradually made up his mind. He walked around the 10th outpost and gave some encouragement to the warriors of the Dawn Army. He also gave them some food and wine. Then, he transformed into a ray of white light and disappeared into the sky. Actually, he really had nothing to worry about. This was because after the prince obtained the true god's lightning, he was extremely confident that he would be able to defeat Mastema. However, if he were to explode with such unimaginable battle prowess, the god of darkness would definitely be wary of him. If things went awry, the god of darkness might even descend to cause trouble for him. Try not to start a fight. It's fine as long as we can save them and leave safely. As William muttered to himself, his speed kept increasing. In this dark sky, he was like a speeding red lightning. When he streaked across the sky, the rumbling sounds of thunder constantly exploded in the world. Countless dark creatures stared blankly at the sky. Some legendary devils and creatures also looked at him curiously and fearfully when they felt the fatal aura. However, the speed of the red lightning was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it had disappeared above their heads. They did not even have the thought of investigating and reporting the situation. After all, it was a red lightning. It did not look like a good person with blue lightning. Perhaps it was a secret technique practiced by a Lord of Darkness. What? You said that it was impossible? Blue meant good people, while red meant bad people. This was how movies, television dramas, and games showed it. 6 hours later, a handsome legendary devil walked in from outside the gate of the city of evil. He thought that with his realm, he would not have to pay a toll. However, the attitude of the city guards was very unyielding. In the end, they demanded 3 dark magic crystals from him. The dark magic crystals contained rich dark elements. To dark creatures and dark professionals, the value of the dark magic crystals was much higher than the magical crystals. Although the magical crystals contained pure magic without attributes, the dark magic crystals only contained dark elements. 1 dark magic crystal was equivalent to 3 dark magic crystals. This was also the key reason why the Dark World had a large number of magical crystal mines, but they did not mine them. After William entered the city, he discovered that the city of evil was much larger than what he saw on the map. There were at least 50 million different kinds of demons living in this exaggerated city. The streets were very chaotic. There were strange-looking devils with huge bodies and high levels. Some low-level devils could not dodge in time and were trampled to death. There were epic devils riding in luxurious Hades carriages. They were doing things that would ruin the morals of the people. The Hades war horses were very fast. If the weak people did not walk carefully on the sides of the streets, they would definitely be knocked to death. Even though many people were very careful, the epic devils deliberately drove the carriages to crash into the people who did not even dare to dodge. The legendary devils were even more domineering. Whenever they walked past, a group of epic devils would surround them. They would even lead a few Hades that would bite people. It was as if they were afraid that people did not know their realm and status. But this was the norm in the dark world. There was no such thing as a wolf in sheep's clothing. One had to display one's strength. That was the way to survive in this place. There were guards in the city of evil, but it was not illegal to kill people on the streets. As long as they did not destroy too many buildings, even if they destroyed buildings or killed people, as long as they paid compensation, everything would be fine. In the city of evil, weakness was the original sin. The Lord of Darkness was the rule. Mastama was the king. Of course, the Viscount of Darkness also lived here. He was also a king. In many people's eyes, the Viscount of Darkness had inherited the God of Darkness inheritance. He was equivalent to a prince, the Prince of Darkness. William was a legendary devil. Although he did not have any subordinates following him, he still emitted his powerful aura. Ordinary people did not dare to approach him. But this was the city of evil. You would not provoke others. There would always be idiots who would provoke you. It was just like how William had a halo of hatred. He had just entered the city for 10 minutes, and someone had his eyes on him. It was a devil at the peak of the legendary level. He led his subordinates and walked over. When the people on the streets saw this guy, they immediately retreated as if they had seen the god of plague. William did not want to provoke him, but this guy had his eyes on him. He even shouted excitedly, "Take him down. I'm going to find a male devil to have some fun with. Just looking at his face makes me feel excited." "Yes, your highness." The 4 legendary devil lackeys behind him immediately walked over with cold expressions. William sighed helplessly. Even though he had used the Dark Dream Primal, his God of Looks endowment could still be used to some extent. As a result, he was still very handsome among the devils. It was his bad luck to encounter such an eccentric guy. It was especially so after he used his insight. He discovered that this brat was the son of Mastama. It was no wonder that he dared to be so arrogant in the city of evil. However, this brat had provoked the wrong person. Just as the 4 legendary demons were about to charge over, William made up his mind. Since he could not leave peacefully, then let's do it. What? Wasn't he a sage? Wasn't it easy for him to escape from these legendary devils? No, that was not how it should be said. When he was still very weak, he could easily dig holes. But now that he had become a sage, he could not dig at all. Hence, an extremely powerful aura soared into the sky. Many legendary devils were stunned. They did not expect that this guy in front of them was actually a sage in disguise. But before they could think for half a second, their consciousness started to blur, because a dazzling red sword light that was like a full moon swept across. In an instant, the eastern city district suddenly collapsed. All the buildings, city walls, and lava rivers within a radius of 100,000 meters disappeared at the same time. They completely turned into dust. Even the foundations that were a few meters below the ground were exposed. This slash, it also allowed him to kill a Lord of Darkness who could not react in time. This slash, it was that domineering. After William sheathed his sword, he hurriedly recalled the true god Thunder into his body. He immediately disappeared in the sky, full of dust. After acting cool, was he not going to run and wait to be beaten? Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Dozens of Lords of Darkness appeared at the same time. They looked at the Eastern City District in disbelief. They did not expect that someone would dare to create trouble here. One slash killed millions of dark creatures. Among them, there were many devils. There were dozens of legendary devils and a Lord of Darkness. 3 seconds later, Mastama appeared in the Eastern City District. He gritted his teeth as he looked at the flattened Eastern City District. He roared furiously, "Who is it? Come out. Where did the Pinnacle Sage come from? Don't let me find out who you are. Otherwise, I'll slaughter your entire family." The king of the city of evil roared furiously. His voice reverberated in the sky. Countless devils and dark creatures hid in their homes, trembling in fear. They were afraid that they would anger this bad-tempered devil king. William had arrived at the western city district. As for Mostamus saying that he would slaughter his entire family, it was enough to hear it. He was afraid that if he revealed his identity, his little brother would kneel down and beg for mercy. However, he didn't expect this kind of diversion tactic. The Viscount of Darkness had also come to the eastern city district to join in the fun. Then it's now. William's figure flashed, and he killed the legendary devil guarding the door. He reached out and broke the barrier. He stuffed the deceived Lancelot into an alternate dimension. Then he turned around and was about to leave. But even though he was fast and decisive, at the same time, the barrier of the city of evil was raised. Not only were there 10 lords of darkness injecting energy into the barrier, but there were also 10 sacred weapons acting as array cores. At this moment, the prince was stunned. Was this a trap? He looked at Mastema and flew towards him. He could not help but scratch his head. What was going on? Did they want him to beat them up? Or rather, the trap that the Viscount of Darkness had prepared for Ursula was being used on him? Chapter 673. I knew that the Supreme Pontiff of Light wouldn't come. But Ursula, since you dared to come, I'll kill you today. Mastema's voice was very loud. But when he saw the newcomer, he suddenly stopped, and his voice became the sound of a mosquito. The Viscount of Darkness widened his eyes and twitched his mouth as he looked at the Lord of the City of Dawn. When he discovered that Lancelot had been taken away, he was inexplicably angry. But Mastema did not dare to let the Viscount of Darkness attack. He immediately stopped him and said in a deep voice, Lord of the City of Dawn, let's mind our own business. If you come to the City of Evil as a guest, I can even let you enjoy the happiness and comfort of a home. But you massacred the city, and now you want to take away Lancelot. You really don't take me, Mastema, seriously. While he was speaking, Mastema stepped into the void and approached. Behind him were 13 sages and the Viscount of Darkness. This group of people was very imposing, and countless devils in the city could not breathe. William glanced at this group of people. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. Oh, do you intend to fight with me? How dare you? Shut up. Mastema made his subordinate scram. Did he want to fight with William? To be honest, he really did not want to. Ever since William used a secret technique to defeat the god's descent of the wilderness god, no one wanted to fight with the Lord of the City of Dawn, be it the sages of the god's continent or the Lord of Darkness. Some people suspected that the wilderness god and William were acting, but the Lord of Darkness was acting with him. TSK. Would others believe that he was not capable? But no matter what, this was the City of Evil. They could not fight, but they had to make the Lord of the City of Dawn apologize. Otherwise, the 7 Devil Kings would lose face. When the 7 Devil Kings met in the future, what would others say? Oh, you were beaten up by the Lord of the City of Dawn. Don't explain. You were beaten up by the Lord of the City of Dawn. What should I do? Where will the gods put their faces? Thus, Mastema revealed a vicious expression. He unsheathed his battle sword and pointed it at William. Sure, attack if you want. Do you really think that you can escape from here just because you're undefeated when facing the Lord God's descent? It's not like I can't unleash the battle prowess of an overgod. Moreover, I'll just invite the God of Darkness to descend. Let's see where you can run to then. Oh, is that what you mean, little Timo? William touched his chin and said in a teasing tone. Instantly, Mastema was stunned. The other Dark Lords did not know what William was talking about. They only knew that William was teasing their Lord Devil King. They gritted their teeth in hatred. But Mastema was truly stunned. Little Timo? Damn it. Wasn't this the same word that the Odin chief god would use to tease him every time they met? Mortimer was stunned. He looked deeply at William, and his brain started to work furiously. He is a thunder element god. Odin is a thunder and light element god. He came to rescue Lancelot. Could it be that this person is part of his avatar? That's not right. Didn't Odin appear from Middle-earth? The Viscount of Darkness did not know that Mastema's mind was in a mess. He could not care less and immediately said, Lancelot is the son of the god of light. My god asked me to bewitch him into falling into darkness. Devil King, don't let Lancelot go. Lancelot is the son of the god of light? Mastema was shocked, but the current situation was very complicated. Lancelot had attracted three main gods, especially the Son of God. How did he become the disciple of the Pope of Light? Odin was in the Middle-earth. What did this have to do with William? Back then, William was just a small god. Did they have to bully him? Now he was stuck in the middle. It was too difficult for him. At this moment, William laughed lightly and said, "Don't make a fuss. You're 5 meters tall. Where's your mushroom hairstyle?" Mastema fell into complete silence. He was sure that Odin and William had a close relationship. Otherwise, he would not have said such things. He was also sure that every time William used God's descent, it was Odin who enhanced him with divine power. So no matter what, Mastema felt that the situation had become very troublesome. Who were the 7 Devil Kings? Gods. But did they really belong to the faction of the God of Darkness? Some of them were. Some of them were not. But they could only survive in the dark world. They were forced to do so. But from the beginning, the gods' continent was the place that the gods loved to live in. No one wanted to live in such a dark place. The dark world was the territory of the God of Darkness. But after they were restricted to the dark world, they could not help but be classified as the faction of the God of Darkness. But just as Mastema was in a dilemma and did not know what to choose. Buzz, 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 buzz. For black pillars of light descended from the sky. Not only did they break through the barrier created by the 10 Lords of Darkness in a strange way, but they also smashed 4 huge holes in the city of evil. Mastema was about to fly into a rage. But the 4 pillars of black light that did not dissipate for a long time reached up to the heavens and down to hell. They were so powerful that they could not look at them directly. The gods had descended. 4 gods of darkness had descended to the human world at the same time. When the 4 figures walked out of the black pillars of light, many of the lords of darkness gasped. They were 4 peak gods of darkness. They were riding a white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and a gray horse respectively. The bodies of the 4 horses were glowing, and their eyes were blood red. They had a terrifying aura. Obviously, they were also 4 sage-level nightmare war horses. They were so rare that they were comparable to the number of sage-level small mermen. And when they saw this standard, all the devils in the city of evil were stunned. They recognized these 4 people. They were the 4 horsemen of darkness. The 4 horsemen of apocalypse under the god of darkness were plague, war, famine, and death. In the mythological era, whenever they appeared, it meant that the end of an area was coming. The god of darkness was very powerful in the mythological era. There were dozens of gods in his faction, and these 4 people were the best of the best. Among them was Death, who was riding on a gray horse. He was wearing a suit of armor that covered his face. Only a pair of chilling eyes could be seen. At this moment, he calmly looked at Mastema. The god's decree has been issued. Kill the Lord of the City of Dawn. Are you going to go against it? I don't dare. Mastema fiercely glared at the Viscount of Darkness. His heart was like a mirror. He knew that the Viscount of Darkness was secretly snitching. When William saw the 4 horsemen of darkness, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. These 4 fellows were also gods. Even though they were the followers of the god of darkness, they were much stronger than most gods. In particular, the 4 of them could fuse their origin power together. It was enough to explode with the combat power of the Lord of Darkness. This was what made the other gods the most afraid. Moreover, so many years had passed. Who knew what other tricks the 4 of them could use? In addition, since the god of darkness had noticed this place, he might have left some trump cards and ultimate moves for them. William felt a little annoyed. This SS-level mission was a little strange. It had a F*King SSS level difficulty. His father's blood essence might not be enough. 10 seconds of supreme sage combat power was obviously not enough for him to defeat the 4 horsemen of darkness. Oh, then he could only use the true god's blood essence. As for the true god's thunder, he definitely could not use it under the watchful eyes of the god of darkness. Otherwise, it would definitely cause unnecessary trouble. William took a deep breath and was about to unleash his full power. Buzz! An aura that could suppress all things in the world instantly penetrated the two worlds. The gods, the legends of the dark world, and the sages all felt the aura that was related to their fates. Supreme Sage. The second Supreme Sage had appeared. William and the others were shocked. They looked above their heads and saw the origin power that had appeared. It dashed in the void and kept charging towards the strangely familiar projection. Fate. Roger's divine luck has become a Supreme Sage. He really became the Lord of Fate. The expressions of many gods who had reincarnated and descended to this world changed drastically. The sages of the gods' continents looked at the fantasy continent in the alternate dimension. They did not expect Roger's divine luck to advance so quickly. But then again, in his previous life, he had represented the luck of the gods. In this life, he could absorb the luck of thousands of living creatures. If the speed at which he broke through the realm was not fast, could it be that others could break through faster? Meanwhile, the four horsemen looked at each other awkwardly. What should they do now? William's father had suddenly become a Lord of Darkness. Oh, a Supreme Sage. But the Lord of Darkness and Supreme Sage were the same type of representatives. In particular, Roger's divine luck had become the representative of fate. Oh my God, if they dared to attack William now, wouldn't they be killed if William changed the fate of others? The situation was a little awkward. The Death Knight, who was riding a gray horse, coughed. We have been ordered to descend to the mortal world to celebrate Roger's divine luck's advancement into the Supreme Sage realm. I hope that the Lord of the City of Dawn will tell him not to forget our friendship in his previous life. That's all. William raised his eyebrows. Yes. That's all. We're leaving. Where are we going? The Famine Knight asked in a daze. They could descend, but they could not go back. The dark world is so big. Let's go for a walk. Let's go. The War Knight waved his small whip and was the first to leave. The corners of Mostima's mouth twitched. He thought that the four of them were really useless. They descended in the most domineering way, but left in the most cowardly way. Couldn't they have a better future? But when William found out that his father had advanced into the Supreme Sage realm, besides feeling a little surprised, he could not help but think of a problem. The true god's corpse had been split into two. The origin of the true god had also been split into two. For example, the time and mental strength fruits had never appeared in the impassable continent. Back then, his father did not go to the impassable continent, which he had stayed in for so many years. Instead, he went to the fantasy continent. It was obvious that he was after the origin of the true god's destiny. Otherwise, perhaps his father had obtained a heaven-defying opportunity that allowed him to comprehend the way to become a Supreme Sage. Besides the true god's corpse, what else is there in the fantasy continent? William scratched his head. He could not help but ponder. Mostima saw that the Lord of the City of Dawn was deep in thought. He did not dare to force him to leave. He had no choice. It was awesome to have a Supreme Sage and a Lord God for a father. Unless the Lord Gods descended on a large scale, William could do whatever he wanted in the two continents. What was his situation now? Yes, he was his father. Your Highness, shall we go in? Mostima revealed an awkward but polite smile. William calmly glanced at him. Sure. Oh yes, find the evil and perverted fellow in the City of Evil. Many Lords of Darkness looked at the Viscount of Darkness. The Viscount of Darkness looked around. Chapter 674. William was very disappointed in the City of Evil. He was very disappointed in the Viscount of Darkness and Mostima. He only wanted to find the most evil, perverted, and disgusting people. But this group of bastards did not satisfy his simple request, because they all agreed that the Viscount of Darkness was the one. But William knew that the Viscount of Darkness could not attack Lancelot. Therefore, William thought of a place. He suddenly understood. The dark world might be evil and chaotic, but they still had their nemesis. Who were the devils most afraid of in the God's continent? It was definitely not the professionals of the Light series, and it was not the Temple Knights. It was the famous Demon Hunter Union. I'm leaving. You disappointed me. As members of the Dark faction, you're not even perverted. How dare you call yourselves Lords of Darkness? Useless. The arrogant William turned and left. Mastema and the other lords of darkness nodded in agreement. Yes, yes, yes. You're right. They were not perverted enough, but they also had a train. They were not like the dragon race, who could attain the sage state in their sleep. They did not have the time to be perverted all day long. Moreover, they were not as perverted as the demon hunter union in the gods' continent. Even if the devils liked to kill for fun, didn't the humans, Serafkin, and elves also like to kill devils? There was no difference between the two. It was just that they were not from the same continent. If they lived in the same world, they would not be able to differentiate so clearly. Oh, your justice? We're evil? It was a pity. The lords of darkness did not dare to defend themselves. After all, the lord of the city of Dawn's father had just attained the sage state. How many people dared to provoke him? Now, they had to wait for the arrival of the Lord of Darkness. Only then could they completely suppress William, who was powerful and had a powerful backer. William asked for some travel expenses from the Lords of Darkness. Then he turned and disappeared from the City of Evil. As for the travel expenses, it was the magical crystals, magical stones, and some magical metals that they disliked. There were more than 20 Lords of Darkness in the City of Evil. If each of them gave a space ring as travel expenses, it would be enough to invite Prince William away. What was this? If they did not invite the Lord would come. They shamelessly plundered the city before leaving. This situation disgusted many of the Dark Lords. After he left, many of the Dark Lords turned to look at the Son of Darkness. The Viscount of Darkness's face darkened. What are you guys doing? Nothing. We're just here to have a chat with you. Mastema sneered and led the group of dark-skinned men over. The Viscount of Darkness sucked in a breath of cold air. Ever since he had obtained this identity, he had never encountered such a crisis. He immediately roared, "How dare you be so impudent? I am the Viscount of Darkness." But above my head is, hey, I'm talking to you. I'm warning you. Take your hand away. I'm angry. What the F***CK? Are you locking me up? Let me go. D***MN. You're not perverted? You're even more perverted than me. The Lord of the City of Dawn has misjudged you. Boo-hoo. The prince didn't know what the Viscount of Darkness had experienced. He just didn't know that his actions had caused those people to vent their anger on the Viscount of Darkness. However, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. After all, compared to a demon hunter, this group of silly devils was too crude. There was no sense of artistry at all. Other than forcefully attacking, there was nothing else. When he returned to the 10th outpost, he discovered that Ursula was waiting for him at the top of the city wall. This was because the Deputy Lord knew that after Roger's Providence attained the Sage Realm, the Dark Lords of the City of Evil would not be able to stop William. He glanced at William and asked, "Where's Lancelot? Did you bring him back?" "Yes, but I still want to show him true evil." Ursula stroked his chin and said, "There's no need. Since he has been rescued, he can slowly endure. With his aptitude, he will attain the Sage Realm sooner or later. If it's any later, the main gods will arrive." The corners of William's mouth twitched. UB** don't care about my brother. Am I that kind of person? Ursula looked at him in confusion. He wanted to say that after the main gods arrived, the Sage Realm experts were just super soldiers. They weren't very useful, but they couldn't be completely useless. But he still asked, "How do you intend to help him attain the Sage Realm? Let him experience the ultimate evil." William narrowed his eyes. Putting on a show? Putting on a show for him? Ursula raised his eyebrows. Lancelot is a little silly, but he's not stupid. If you're putting on a show, he'll definitely be able to tell. No. Even when I went to the headquarters of the Demon Hunter Union, I couldn't sense that they were putting on a show. If you don't believe me, seal your own cultivation level. I'll send you there too. Ursula was deep in thought. He turned around and decided to watch William leave. But just as William was about to leave, the Deputy Lord patted William's shoulder and said with a pained expression, "The Pope of Light and I watched Lancelot grow up. He's closer than our own son. Let him suffer less. Yes, let it be less traumatized. Is that okay?" Got it. William shook his shoulders impatiently. After breaking free from Ursula's grasp, he immediately rushed to the Demon Hunter Union. Soon, William set foot in this alternate dimension again. Here, the demon hunters could coexist peacefully with all kinds of devils. But for some unknown reason, regardless of whether the devils were male or female, they liked to wander the streets in female attire. No, I have to hurry. Otherwise, my eyes will go blind. William felt a little nauseous as he walked into the secret house of the seven elders. He saw the seven elders, who were always cooped up in their lair. What the hell? What do you mean by that? The silver-haired Jirog could not help but clench his fists. The muscles on his body trembled violently. He seemed to be very angry. He felt that William's words were very disrespectful. William silently placed the teacup that was stained with spit on the table and turned to look at the chairman of the Demon Hunter Union. Vesemir waved his hand, indicating for Jirog not to be impulsive. The unique hobbies of people like them would indeed make some people uncomfortable. But he wanted to ask, are you sure that Lancelot will really step into the sage state because of this situation? I'm not sure. William shook his head. But you'll know once you try. Actually, you don't understand this Lord of Light. He has a unique view of evil and perverted people. He has strong perseverance, and he can withstand many types of merciless torture. But when it comes to your behavior, he may view it as an incurable existence. The seven elders of the Demon Hunter Union fell into deep thought. But after careful consideration, Vesemir nodded. All right, then we'll do as you say. We'll disguise ourselves as devils and say that you've been captured. The rest of the process will be the same as how we treat the Lord of Darkness. No. William shook his finger. Don't say the Lord of Darkness. Use your special words, big baby. All right, after we disguise ourselves as devils, let's begin. Vesemir finished speaking and used a secret technique to transform himself into a devil. As for whether their disguises were realistic, yes, William dared to swear to the true God. Among the professionals in the God's continent, no one knew more about devils than the seven elders of the Demon Hunter Union. If Lancelot could detect that something was wrong, there was only one possibility. Lon had practiced in the alchemy furnace of Taishang Laojun. Otherwise, how could he distinguish the 7 beat asterisk stars? Sai, it's been so long, and you still don't let me out? Is William unable to escape? That's bad. It's fine if I'm in danger, but if I put him in such a situation, D*****, why am I so weak? Lancelot clenched his fists and slapped himself a few times. He hated himself for not being able to attain the sage state. Why couldn't he fight alongside William and defend against the enemies? But at this moment, crack! The alternate dimension was torn apart. A huge black hand suddenly grabbed Lancelot. Disregarding Lancelot's struggle, the hand squeezed him until he fainted. After an unknown period of time, Lancelot slowly opened his eyes and found that his body had been imprisoned. There were seals all over his body. Then he saw William's corpse being dragged by a Lord of Darkness and thrown out of the door. Meanwhile, a total of 7 Lords of Darkness surrounded him with lascivious expressions. Gulp! Lancelot gulped. He didn't know what kind of torture Lord of the City of Dawn had just gone through. But from his disheveled appearance, he should be in a miserable state. Fortunately, William's aura was still there. But no matter how one looked at it, William's half-dead appearance made it seem like he had gone through the most evil and perverted torture. At this time, he finally saw his surroundings clearly. He was now imprisoned on a large pink bed. It did not look like a place where he should be tortured, but he still felt that there was something wrong with the heads of these Lords of Darkness. Shouldn't he be in the torture room? But it was a pity. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even close his eyes. But all his senses were very sharp. Suddenly, Lancelot had goosebumps all over his body. He felt as if someone had reached under his clothes and was touching his chest from behind. That feeling. That unimaginable feeling. Lancelot was terrified. He finally realized that he had the feeling of fear. In particular, the Lords of Darkness used the devil language to say, "Big baby, this big baby is very beautiful. This big baby's frightened eyes are very cute." Instantly, he was shocked, but it was useless to struggle. Very soon, in his despair, he was stripped naked. He thought that he was going to suffer the most perverted torture since he was born. But he was put on a pink dress by the 7 Lords of Darkness. Lancelot's eyes lit up, and his teeth kept chattering. This was because forcing him to wear female clothing was simply too shameful. Moreover, the 7 Lords of Darkness seemed to have this kind of fetish. They had to make him wear female clothing before they made a move on him. As time passed, more and more hands were placed on Lancelot's body. He became more agitated and furious. His eyes were burning with anger. Suddenly, he had a change of heart. Yes, the Pope of Light was right. Ursula was right. The Viscount of Darkness was right. In this world, there were many unforgivable people. They were born evil. No, he wanted to break through. He wanted to enter the sage state. He wanted to escape with William. He wanted to kill these bastards. Chapter 675. Lancelot was in a desperate situation, but it was difficult for him to attain the sage state in one go. Even in his dreams, he wanted to attain the sage state. Time continued to pass. The 7 grand elders of the demon hunters were even a little excited because 6 hours had passed. They had done all the foreplay that they could. If it did not continue, would it be too fake? Moreover, they could not hold it in any longer. They intended to turn the act into reality. However, a full 6 hours of preparation was enough for the famous Son of Light to change his mindset. He became determined. He only wanted to protect his chastity. Hence, Lancelot, who had been at the peak of the legendary stage for 8 years, felt a fatal crisis in a certain position. His eyes began to glow, and the blood in his body began to boil. His muscles began to swell. In an instant, the origin of light laws appeared from the void and surged into his body. The barriers on his body shattered. He had a breakthrough in the face of adversity. The aura of a sage soared into the sky. It was accompanied by the sound of clacking. He had attained the sage state in one step. If not for the fact that this room belonged to the secret room of the demon hunters and was filled with various runes and barriers, it would have completely collapsed. But Lancelot's treatment was like that of a protagonist in a novel. But he was in a bad state. Lancelot's clothes were tattered, and his pink dress was full of holes. Some parts of his body were sore. "You are a group of sinners. You deserve to die. You deserve to die." Lancelot's eyes were red, and tears almost flowed out. He activated the god's blood in his body, and his combat power increased. His aura became stronger. But at this moment, the 7 Lords of Darkness hurriedly shouted, "Death thou break." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Their bodies started to distort. Under Lancelot's shocked gaze, they transformed into 7 burly sages. They smiled at him. At this moment, William finally walked out from behind the door. He looked at the confused Lancelot and said, "Ahem, don't attack." Let me tell you, Lancelot was taken aback. He looked at the 7 sages and seemed to understand something. However, he did not want to listen. He walked towards William angrily and wanted to interrogate him about certain things. But William just waved his hand, and the 7 elders surrounded him again. Even if William didn't want to listen, he had to listen to them. That was all. 3 hours passed. Under William's careful guidance, the Viscount of Light finally calmed down. At this time, the 2 of them were sitting in a living room. The 7th elder was not beside them. Lancelot held his teacup and pondered for a long time. He looked at William, who was still explaining, and said helplessly, "You don't have to explain anymore. I believe you." "Really?" William swallowed his saliva. Their affinity for each other had not decreased. He knew that he would definitely be able to convince this little brother. "Yes, I believe it. In fact, I've completely believed it ever since I stepped into the saint realm. I used to be too stubborn, but after I became a saint, I realized how stupid I used to be. If you hadn't used this method to make me understand this truth, I might have been trapped in the legendary rank for a very long time. No matter what. Thanks." After Lancelot finished speaking, he fell into deep thought again. He even moved his buttocks uneasily. There was a feeling. You cannot describe it. It was as if someone was constantly caressing your body. This strange feeling made Lancelot very uncomfortable. He did not know how long it would take for him to completely forget this terrible memory. When William saw his state, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Brother, find a girlfriend. After all, although your looks are a few hundred times worse than mine, you're still considered handsome in the eyes of some bad guys. You don't want to be caught and lose your chastity in your old age, right? Lancelot did not say anything, but in his heart, he agreed with William's words. It was time to find a girlfriend. He did not want to give his first time to some D*MN perverts. Seriously, at that time, he was so desperate that he wanted to cry. And then, Lancelot bade farewell to William. There were still many dark incidents in the legendary continent. Dark creatures were wreaking havoc everywhere. As the Viscount of Light who had stepped into the Saint Realm, he should spread the light of justice to the world. William did not ask him to stay. He watched Lancelot leave. Ding dong. Prompt. You have completed the SS level mission rescue of Lancelot. Prompt. You have obtained 11 billion experience points. Prompt. You have obtained 11 random lucky draw X11. Prompt. The Temple of Light's affinity with you has increased by 3,000 points. Prompt. The Pope of Light's affinity with you has increased by 100 points. Ursula's affinity with you has increased by 100 points. Prompt. Lancelot's affinity with you has increased by 32 points. His affinity with you has increased to 1,000 points. William glanced at the rewards. The rewards of this SS level mission were not substantial. The affinity with the camp and the sage level experts were the most important. After all, the mainframe treated him as a player. Now that he had increased his affinity with Lancelot, there were many things that could be manipulated. It was not that the rewards were not good. But to William, he did not care about the random lucky draw. It was not as valuable as the toll fees in the City of Evil. After a period of time, the gods' continent experienced a long time of peace. But everyone knew that a storm was coming. The war between the gods and the sages was about to begin. At this moment, no matter which continent it was, there were gods who were constantly spreading their faith, building temples, and secretly forming their own armies. It was imaginable. When the humans, Serafkin, elves, and dwarves could not tolerate it anymore, a war would break out. But only in the southern region of the legendary continent. There was not a single god who dared to spread their faith. Of course, there were no gods spreading their faith, but it did not mean that the players had nothing to do. After the 7 continents became closer to each other, the areas that the players could go to were not limited to one continent. As long as they were not afraid of being killed by other players, they could go to other continents. But no matter how intense the war between the players was, no matter how much the gods spread their faith. Now, it had nothing to do with William, because it was today. Annie's coming-of-age ceremony had been successfully held in the new Moonlight Forest. After the banquet, the royal members of the 3 elven tribes, as well as the nobles of the human empires and kingdoms, dispersed. William looked at the pretty little princess. He held her hand and went to the moonlight tree to look at the starry sky. Although the prince always accompanied different women to look at the same starry sky. But that was how it was. William's mood was different every time. He was especially happy today. This was an important point, and he had to remember it. What are you thinking about? Annie saw the smile on William's face and raised her eyebrows. She felt that he was up to no good. Nothing. What are you thinking about? William did not dare to tell the truth. He just asked her a question. I miss my father and mother. The little princess was a little unhappy. The coming-of-age ceremony of the elves was usually held by their parents. Her grandfather, Camelot, had held it for her. The banquet was very grand, but it lacked some meaning. Or rather, it lacked paternal and maternal love. William fell into deep thought. It was not a good time to speak. If he did, he would definitely be scolded. It was better to have some fun and make the little princess happy. He suddenly pointed to the sky and said in surprise, "Look, meteors." Swish, swish, swish. Streaks of blue meteors streaked across the sky. They were as fast as lightning. Annie's eyes lit up. She was about to put her palms together to make a wish. But she suddenly tilted her head and glanced at the man beside her, who was looking at the sky. Why did she feel that those meteors were like lightning? She stretched out her hand and hit William's head. Pa! Crackle. The pain made the little princess's hand electrify. But at the same time, The meteors made 7 or 8 turns in the sky and disappeared in the eyes of some elves who also wanted to make a wish. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He looked awkwardly at the angry little princess. Just as he was about to touch her little head, she grabbed him and bit him hard. Crack! The little princess was about to cry from the pain. Not only did she not break a layer of skin, but her teeth almost fell off. Let go, let go. You're not hurting, but I'm hurting. William coughed lightly and retracted his finger. If you don't let go, I'll bite you to death today. The little princess said vaguely. Her 2 little canine teeth were exposed, which she hadn't seen for a long time. She looked very cute. If you don't let go, then I'll use my ultimate move. Come on, I'll bite you to death. You be asterisk starred. For a moment, 2 figures entangled under the moonlight. They rolled from the balcony to the bed. The prince was lying on the little princess's body. Both of them were panting heavily. Annie's face was a little red. She wanted to push William away, but she did not have the strength to do so. She could only say softly, "Get up. You're pressing down on my hair." "Oh, then I'll let go of your hair." William gently blew at her long hair, but he did not move away. The little princess wanted to struggle, but the more she struggled, the hotter her body became. Her strength became weaker and weaker. She did not want to struggle. It was more like they were flirting. William looked at the blushing and evasive Annie. He gently lowered his head and rubbed her ear, blowing hot air. He softly said, "My little princess, you're an adult now." Annie did not make a sound, but her heart was beating rapidly. "If you don't speak, it means that you're not rejecting me. Shall I continue?" William asked maliciously. The little princess still did not speak. She even closed her eyes and grabbed the bedsheets with her small hands. She did not dare to move. But when the long dress on her body fell off, there was no longer anything covering her body. The little princess opened her eyes. Their gazes met. Chapter 676. The next morning, William's face was pale. He held his waist and leaned against the wall as he watched the elves playing in front of him. Not long after, Lautner, who had followed William here, hurried over. He looked at William with a strange expression, as if he wanted to ask something. William said impatiently, "If you have something to say, say it. Then leave. Don't stay here and be an eyesore." "No, Prince William, you're getting worse by the day. You used to have 7 days of history, but you've become so weak after one night. You have to make up for it." Lautner shook his head and sighed. William was so angry that he almost slapped him. But then again, if the little princess had not been tired and had fallen asleep, William would not be supporting himself against the wall. "I'm a sage. No, in order to maintain my dignity as a man, I have to reach the supreme sage realm in the future." William silently swore in his heart. In this aspect, it had nothing to do with one's realm. It depended on one's condition. Lautner didn't know what His Royal Highness was thinking. He had already received the information from the transmission scroll, but he knew that last night was the little princess coming of age ceremony and His Royal Highness, big day, so he didn't dare to report the situation. He coughed lightly and said seriously, "Last night, the Jones continent and the archipelago continent started a holy war." William's expression changed. He did not expect this day to come so soon. "Then, has anyone died? Who was the one who attacked first?" "No one died, but the sages of the human empires attacked first. It's because there's no need to explain. It must be that the way those deities spread their faith was too excessive. Otherwise, they would all be saints. They would understand that it's a small loss. However, the most important thing is that the deities didn't fall." The prince heaved a sigh of relief. They must not kill the gods. Otherwise, the gods would descend. There was no doubt about this. If the gods did not initiate a war, the sages would start a war and kill the gods. The Lord of God would unleash his great power and intimidate the entire gods' continent. The Pope of Light did not want to provoke them. He wanted to maintain peace so that the sages of the gods' continent had enough time to train. If someone killed the gods, the Lord of Light would descend on the 7 continents. With so many main gods descending on the 7 continents at the same time, no matter how powerful the Radiant Pope was, how many people could he save? He couldn't split himself into two, because even a core god in the state of divinity descent was far from what a saint could resist. A core god could easily suppress an entire continent. This was also the reason why William had not dared to kill the gods. He had spoken loudly enough, but he had never dared to kill them. Of course, there was more than one transcendent saint in the gods' continent. Roger's god's luck, who was also his father, had also stepped into the supreme sage realm. But William did not know which side he would help, or if he did not want to care about either side. Ever since he had become a transcendent and the god of destiny, he had never returned to the city of Dawn to see Joshua. He had merely sent a message to him, telling him that his mother had become a saint as well and that he didn't have to worry. But William and Seth still found a problem. Divination was gradually losing its effectiveness. Lance has done a lot of experiments, and she has found that over time. The destinies of ordinary people, beginner, intermediate, and advanced professions were shrouded in fog and could no longer be seen through. Let me put it this way. In the past, on the Darkness continent and the Gods continent, the fates of almost all living beings had their own rules. They were all predetermined by the heavens. From the moment a person was born to the moment he became a legend, everything he encountered and did was controlled by the laws of fate. However, the laws of fate were not infallible. There would always be people who encountered some sort of fortuitous encounter that could kill them, but they still managed to escape with their lives. Otherwise, they would have obtained some sort of heaven-defying opportunity that allowed them to escape their own fate. Otherwise, even if the king of hell wanted them dead at midnight, they wouldn't be able to live past midnight. But now, Roger's providence was carrying out a heaven and earth changing event. That was to use his control over the laws of destiny to gradually allow everyone to control their own destinies and become their own god of destiny. It was almost conceivable, in the near future, regardless of whether it was a main god or a transcendent saint, none of them would be able to predict what the future would be like. William did not know what his father was thinking, nor did he know why he was doing this. However, he knew that this method was definitely not easy to accept. However, the prince was not too worried, because his mother was the goddess of life. As long as Alice was by his side, William was not worried that his father would completely destroy him. But what is he trying to do? Changing the fate lines on such a large scale might result in a backlash. William sighed helplessly. The gods' continent was like a chaotic battlefield of conspiracies. The gods, sages, elves, humans, winged people, dwarfs, and dragons all had their own intentions and plans. Every person, every race, and every power was planning for their own goals, and even sacrificing their lives for them. They were fanatical. They believed in freedom. They believed in gods. In this extremely chaotic situation, the prince did not know how long the current peaceful situation would last, because he, who was already invincible in the sage state, had changed too much of the course of history. He was no longer that little butterfly. He had become a hurricane that could overturn the entire continent. Everything that he did would change the views and decisions of many people. The main storyline mission of version 5.0 had gone astray. Things that should have happened did not happen, and things that should not have happened happened one after another. Nobody and the players had realized it. But these events were not part of the history in the mind of a reincarnated person like William. This is no longer the butterfly effect. It should be called the hurricane effect. William sighed emotionally. Then he glanced at Lautner, who was standing at the side in a daze. He said in a deep voice, "Go back. Everything will proceed according to plan. I will stay here with Annie for a few days." Lautner turned to leave. The prince said again, "Wait. The war that will engulf the continent will erupt at any time. But the City of Dawn is very strong. It can temporarily ensure the stability of the territory. It is also responsible for taking care of the intelligent races. Go back and inform the entire legendary continent. From today onwards, the City of Dawn will take in all the displaced civilians, regardless of race, bloodline, or age." Lautner looked at him with some emotions and turned to leave. William muttered to himself, "I've long become a part of the gods' continent. The players can treat it as a game." but I want to treat it as my life. According to the customs of the elves, after the coming-of-age ceremony, the female elves would stay in the tribe for 7 days. So during this period, even if something major happened, William would not leave Annie. He was a scumbag. But in the eternal life, it was unreliable to discuss whether a long-lived species would fall in love with more than one person of the opposite sex, especially when he was a half-elf. He only had a human soul. But there was nothing much to explain. After all, everyone knew that the prince was such a person. It was written on his face. Pure. Honest. Otherwise, why would there be so many ladies chasing after him all day? Was it because he was handsome? No, it was because he was honest enough. Honest people would always be liked by ladies. 7 days later, the prince had lost a lot of weight. But in the new moonlight forest, he could rest during the day, so he did not become too weak. After William brought Annie back to the City of Dawn, he embarked on his journey alone. Because during this period of time, all the sages, legendary warriors, and gods felt a fatal aura suddenly rising and disappearing. It was someone stepping into the transcendental sage realm, although he failed in the end. However, the aura that erupted from that person simply made it hard for countless people to breathe. It was as if there were tens of thousands of rules pressing down on them. They could not even lift their heads. But coincidentally, after that person failed to break through, William received a mission from Camelot, who was Scarab III, the great elder of the Moonlight Elves. Use the identity of Scarab I to stop that person who is about to become a transcendental sage. Is this an SSS-level mission for a sage? William took a deep breath. He did not know how many parts of the mission were involved, but he could clearly feel the importance of this mission. Because he also had Odin's memories, he was almost certain that the person who was about to become a transcendental sage was the god of devouring. Otherwise, he had inherited the god of devouring's legacy. That was not right. It was Scarab I. Otherwise, when that person was about to become a transcendental sage, he would not be able to exert so much pressure from the rules. What William had to do now was to use the mission clues to find Scarab I or the god of devouring who might exist. But at the same time, many people were also searching for that person who was about to become a transcendental sage, because they also felt the danger. The pressure that was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people, as well as the endless killing intent. Almost no one wanted that person to become a transcendental sage. But even if many people wanted to kill that person, no one had the intention to join forces. Because in the eyes of most people, it was best to kill that person and snatch his legacy. As for William's first clue, it was not some kind of mission information, because when he received the mission from Camelot, he received a compass, and the origin of this compass was given to him by Scarab II, who had been in seclusion for many years. Scarab told William that if Scarab I really did something that defied the natural order, William had to take the compass and look for him. William narrowed his eyes. He really wanted to know who Scarab II was. He wanted to know if Scarab II had the ability to stop Scarab I or the god of devouring, who was about to become a transcendental sage. Chapter 677. This compass is a scam. Besides pointing to the north, there's nothing else. William had already flown out of the legendary continent. He stood on a glacier in the extreme north and looked at the compass in his hand. He could not help but complain. Fortunately, the needle of the compass would not move randomly. It always pointed in the same direction. This meant that Scarab II was not moving. With William's speed, he would be able to find that person sooner or later. But to be honest, it was better to give him the coordinates so that he could open a teleportation portal. But Camelot handed the compass to me. That guy is too cowardly. William stroked his chin. After that person failed to become a transcendent, Camelot felt that this person was related to Scarab II. Camelot was not only afraid of Scarab II, but he was also afraid of Scarab II, who was in seclusion. Fortunately, William was a guest in the Moonlight Forest at that time. Coincidentally, this mission was given to Camelot. I feel like there's a conspiracy, but don't be too afraid. If I can't do it, I'll fight with my father. Let's see who dares to touch me. William laughed arrogantly. He knew that his father had no time to care about him, but others did not. Furthermore, as long as the opponent was not a transcendent, William was confident that he could kill him. He had no choice. Although his level was low, his combat power was high. Although he could not use the thunder of the true gods for a long time, he could easily unleash the combat power of a transcendent within a short period of time. 6 hours later, William followed the compass and flew to the northernmost ice field. He raised his head and looked at the connected glaciers that were tens of thousands of meters long. The compass seemed to be pointing at the back of an ice mountain. But when he flew over the ice mountain, there was only chaos outside. Below his feet and above his head was an endless starry sky. After all, he had said it before, the gods' continent was not a planet. It was a continent that floated in the universe. Thor 3. Asgard. He had arrived at the border of the gods' continent. As for the chaotic energy, it was obvious that it could not cause any harm to him. William did not hesitate. He followed the compass and continued to fly to the border of chaos. After an unknown period of time, the compass needle suddenly spun wildly. It seemed that he had reached the destination. But after William surveyed the surroundings, he did not detect any barriers. Therefore, he chose to move downward. True enough, there was finally a slight change in the direction of the compass, which was to let him follow the edge of the gods' continent and go deeper. At this moment, William saw many interesting things. For example, the sea creatures that were sealed in ice. There were large and small ones, and there were even some giant sea monsters that had never been seen or heard of. As he gradually moved downwards, after more than 100,000 meters, the layer of ice that was tainted with the aura of chaos disappeared. The layer of ice on the sea disappeared, and a layer of rock appeared. William squinted his eyes, trying to find traces of life in the exposed rock layers. But obviously, nothing could survive here. Next, he sank another 300,000 meters. Finally, he once again arrived at the reverse side of the gods' continent. The scenery that was full of vitality had disappeared. Now, all that was left was a stretch of scorched earth, as well as a giant pit whose end could not be seen with the naked eye. Of course, there were also many ruins of buildings and traces of the existence of certain living beings. There used to be oceans, forests, animals, magical beasts, and everything else. As for why this place had become like this, naturally, the chaotic aura protecting the edge of the continent had disappeared, and the atmosphere had also been destroyed. But here, it was originally the place where the moon people lived. William did not know why the compass brought him to the reverse side of the gods' continent, but he already vaguely knew. Even if Scarab II was not a moon person, he should be someone who had inherited the legacy of the moon people. Of course, the moon people were not called Purple Moon or Blue Moon. They were collectively known as the Sacred Tribe, just like the gods who had named themselves as the gods. Were the moon people powerful? Very powerful, because they were born in the same era as the gods. The gods were born in the gods' continent. The moon people were born in the Sacred Talisman continent. Why did the gods research the Holy Road? Was it really self-created? What a joke. The gods relied on their endowments to grow. Naturally, they modified the Sacred Tribe's cultivation method to find a legacy for the elves, humans, and winged people. As for the Sacred Tribe, of course, they were annihilated by the gods. The Sacred Tribe and the gods were born in the same era, and they had two different cultivation methods. But obviously it was the gods' cultivation method, which relied on faith, was definitely faster and more powerful. At that time, both sides had a certain level of communication. For example, they exchanged cultivation methods, resources, and so on. At first, everything was very peaceful. At first, the gods were not completely crazy. But after the crisis of faith, the gods had to make a decision. To wipe out the Holy Talisman continent. To make this Sacred Tribe, whose cultivation speed was not fast but was steadily improving, disappear completely. At least, to make it impossible for them to invade the gods' continent when the gods were in seclusion. But this also caused a huge disagreement among the gods. Some gods did not want to do so, thinking that it would be punished by heaven. But some gods did not care so much. Their ambitions were constantly growing. After they became lords, they thought that they were the masters of this continent. And until then, the gods were completely divided into two factions. The reincarnation faction, the chief faction. As for the operation to destroy the Holy Talisman continent, it was led by the chief faction. They led hundreds of gods to attack at the same time. At that time, there were very few sages in the sacred tribe. The most powerful ones were only peak sages. When the hundreds of gods arrived, they decided to welcome them with the greatest respect. But unfortunately, they did not welcome a group of guests. They were a group of demons. Several lords worked together to destroy the chaotic energy, and hundreds of gods tore the atmosphere with their bare hands. They used the simplest and most decisive method to expose countless sacred tribe, living creatures, and hundreds of millions of living beings to the starry sky. But the Lord God seemed to be really afraid of heaven's punishment. He left many sacred tribe members behind and threatened them to make them swear that before the gods returned, the sacred tribe sages would never step into the gods' continent. Subsequently, the remaining peak sages of the sacred tribe burned their origin to create 3 moons for the sacred tribe to survive. And this was the origin of the purple moon, green moon, and blue moon. William was very clear about this. Ever since he inherited Odin's memories, he was very clear about this, because Odin was an autistic person. But Odin did not attack. Instead, he chose to go into seclusion with the reason of researching an autistic method. He ignored this cruel and merciless extermination operation. William slowly descended. His feet landed on the ruins, and he felt a little depressed. At this moment, the compass began to spin wildly, as if telling William that he had arrived at the right place. Because, right in front of him, there was a sacred temple with a magical barrier. The prince clenched his fists, stepped across the barrier, and walked into it. Air. William took a deep breath. He did not need to breathe, but when he saw the ruins, he really wanted to take a few breaths to relieve his stress. This sacred temple was not very big. The purpose of the sacred temple was not to collect faith. It was a temple that the sacred tribe had voluntarily built for the sages, in hopes that the sages could protect themselves. But everything has become a joke. William laughed at himself and walked into the sacred temple. When he pushed open the door of the sacred temple, he discovered that the sage statue had collapsed. Its head was rolling on the ground, and there were 2 black holes in its eyes. Just as he was looking around, a voice rang out. The door of the sacred temple slowly opened. A tall man wearing ancient armor and a golden mask was looking at him. His eyes were very bright, as if they were glowing. The pupil of his left, I was like a crescent moon, while the pupil of his right, I was like a human's. William raised his eyebrows. He stretched out his hand and threw the compass to Scarab. Scarab, too, caught the compass and threw it to the side. He pondered for a long time before saying in a halting voice, "Did Scarab ask you to come? Is Scarab 1 about to achieve a breakthrough?" "Perhaps." William nodded. He did not know if it was Scarab 1 or the god of devouring. Hee. Scarab 2 laughed lightly. "He really thinks highly of you. He is an advanced sage, but he doesn't dare to come. Instead, he sent a middle sage lad to look for me." William shrugged nonchalantly. He could not help but ask, "Did you give me information about Scarab 1, or did you give it to me after I convinced you?" "Convinced? Look at you. You're more likely to convince me by sleeping with you." Scarab 2 laughed coldly. William's mouth twitched. He had nothing to say to this pervert. He immediately unsheathed his heaven-suppressing blade and crimson battle blade. He wanted to beat Scarab into submission first. After all, he was never willing to talk too much when it came to things that could convince people with force. When Scarab 2 saw the crimson battle blade, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "Who is the sword sage to you?" "Him? Hey, your friend wants to see you." William casually took out the imprisoned soul of the sword sage and let him take a breather. Before the soul of the sword sage could throw out the flying eye, William stuffed it back in. Scarab 2's expression changed slightly. He had thought that the person in front of him was related to the sword sage. After all, William was holding onto the treasure of the sword sage. Perhaps William was the descendant of the sword sage, but he did not expect William to capture the sword sage alive. Yes, William had captured the sword sage alive. If William did not have absolute power, he would not have been able to do that. But defeating the Sword Sage did not mean anything. After all, William was equivalent to 2 or 3 Sword Sages. But Scarab 1 was equivalent to 5 or 6 Sword Sages. This kind of powerful strength had already formed a qualitative change. Moreover, Scarab 1 was about to become a surpassing sage. His strength had obviously increased. Yes, Scarab 1 was equivalent to 20 Sword Sages. But no matter what, Scarab 2 still wanted to test William's strength before discussing the next matter. Thus, Scarab 2 slowly stood up, took out a thick and long rod, and said softly, "Come, let me test your limits." William narrowed his eyes. He silently kept his heaven-suppressing blade and crimson battle blade. To be honest, when he really wanted to beat someone up, he would not use his blade. Chapter 678. You want to fight? Where to? William raised his eyebrows and asked. Where to? Isn't a boundless continent of ruins enough to fight? In the next moment, Holy Art 2's aura soared into the sky, and the entire sacred temple was reduced to ashes in an instant. He swung his blood-red saint-grade staff in an arc, and the indescribable force completely tore the space in its path. William narrowed his eyes and raised his left hand to block. Bang! The flesh on his hand cracked, and William's body involuntarily moved to the other side, leaving a long scar on the ruined land. But the bone of the true God was unscathed. At the same time, God's descent, unparalleled, his combat power increased to the peak of the sage level. But at the same time, Scarab 2, who had been at the peak of the sage level for many years, had his aura soar again. He swung his staff and swept away thousands of enemies. Thousands of blood-red staff shadows smashed into the ground. William roared angrily and activated the endowment of the Thunder Mage. He fused magic and battle energy into one, transforming them into a lightning shield that enveloped his entire body. He took a step forward, and his body instantly expanded to a height of 1,000 meters. He punched with both fists, shaking the heavens and the earth. Bang! A wave of air stirred up by electric arcs and blood-colored energy crushed the surrounding ruined buildings into ashes, forming a huge crater in the middle of the ruined city. At this moment, Scarab 2 stood high in the sky and looked down at William, who was in the crater. He held his blood-red staff and said in a deep voice, Scarab 2's moves are ever-changing, and he controls many endowment laws. I've attained the sage level with my strength, and my strength can break through thousands of techniques. That's why I can fight with him for 3 minutes. You can't do it in your current state. William raised his head and looked at him. He did not speak. Scarab 2 was not ordinary. His blood-red energy was not fresh blood, but pure power. Or rather, Scarab 2's endowment was the law of power, the pure law of power. Crass, the reincarnation of Hercules, was most proficient in the law of earth. He could use the energy of the earth to provide him with endless power. But from this, it could be seen that Crass' control of the law of power was not as good as Scarab 2's. If Scarab 2 was given time to attain the sage level, he would definitely be able to compete with Crass for the position of Hercules. Then, in terms of pure strength, even if I have the bone of the true gods, I won't be able to win. At most, I can only take some hits. William was thinking. Swoosh. Scarab 2 charged over and swung his blood-red staff again. William dodged to the side. Rumble. A canyon was blasted out by the blood-colored energy. Meanwhile, William punched out. His fist was like a solid thunder fish shadow, and its speed soared like a rocket. Bang, bang, bang. There were 3 explosions, and it instantly hit the opponent's chest, causing him to retreat thousands of meters. However, even though Scarab 2 had retreated very quickly, the speed at which he charged back was even faster. Countless gravel and dust exploded behind him as he forcefully tore through space and arrived in front of William in a single step, smashing down with his staff. Bang! The prince's skull exploded. His scalp disappeared, and his hair also turned into nothingness. His body was smashed into the ground, but he still managed to break through the prince's armor with a backhand and forcefully clawed out a large piece of flesh from the prince's abdomen. Scarab 2's expression changed slightly. This guy in front of him should be a berserker. The more he was beaten, the more ferocious he would be. He immediately swung his staff downwards and slapped Scarab's arm away. But William also took the opportunity to rise from the ground. He punched out with both his fists, which were accompanied by vast thunder energy. His fists hit Scarab 2's face. However, in the blink of an eye, Scarab 2's left eye suddenly lit up. The fist shadow that seemed to be about to reach his face actually stopped for a moment. It was also in that moment that Scarab 2 dodged to the side. The fist shadow brushed past his body and whistled through the air, charging straight into the sky. As for him, he swung his stick with a backhand. Clang! William raised his left hand, which revealed his white bones. When the two collided, the tremors caused the surrounding space to collapse inch by inch. In the next second, the thunder finger, a thunder thread as thin as a needle, instantly pierced through Scarab 2's chest. Crack! Crack! Cracks appeared on the surface of Scarab 2's armor, and fresh blood flowed out uncontrollably. A black line that was tens of thousands of meters long appeared on his back. It was a spatial crack caused by the lightning finger streaking across space. William thought that this was enough and wanted to discuss it with him. The result was something he had never expected. Scarab 2, on the other hand, spat out blood and started laughing maniacally. He looked just like the villains in the movies. The prince's mouth twitched. He watched as the man retreated and tore off his armor with a ferocious look. He even took off his mask, revealing a rather young face. Until then, William's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but look at his well-built body. Oh, it was his body. No, it was all kinds of rune imprints on his upper body. They were densely packed like a curse, but also like some kind of power. It was hard for William to describe just what the runes on his body were. But he could see that these ancient runes were something that only the saints could control, and they also had a sealing power. Kid, do you know what the U-Clan is? Do you know what the saints of the U-Clan did after they couldn't break through for a long time? They wouldn't waste their lives. They wouldn't live aimlessly. They would sacrifice themselves. They sacrificed their own power and gave the purest power to the most talented practitioner of their clan. At this moment, Scarab 2 had already covered his body with fresh blood. It was the effect of the fresh blood that caused the runes to slowly disappear, but it also caused his aura to become stronger. He had broken through the boundary of the saints and possessed the status of a saint. And I inherited the sacrifice of the 10 saints of the clan. As he spoke, his aura continued to increase, as if he had become a rocket. Hey, do you have to be so dramatic? You can't hold it in any longer. What Moon Clan? Just say that you're a saint. I don't care, especially when you're fighting with me. Why did you use a forbidden skill? William wanted to complain, but he wanted to see the true combat power of this guy. After all, how could he put it? No matter how many transformations you had, no matter how long your rod was, once I, the true god, attacked, you would be like a monkey under my 5-finger mountain. But Scarab 2's Chinibu problem was not light. After he possessed the power of a saint, his gaze was condescending. He was even more domineering than when William had surpassed a saint in 10 seconds. But he did not expect something to happen. After Scarab 2 equipped himself for 3 full seconds. Swish! The fresh blood on his body disappeared, and various rune markings appeared again. **T. Scarab cursed. Scarab 2 knelt on the ground with a thud. He violently coughed out blood. He must have suffered a backlash from the power of a saint's rules. Fortunately, the runes on his body had some kind of power. In a short period of time, the runes absorbed all the power of the rules. Scarab 2 did not die. What? It's shorter than mine. The corners of William's mouth twitched. Before he had obtained the blood essence, he only had the power of a saint for 10 seconds. But this guy could only use it for 3 seconds. And he had used it to act cool. But it was interesting. The runes on his body did not show any signs of weakening. It seemed to prove that he could repeatedly use this forbidden skill. William walked in front of Scarab 2 but he did not attack. Half an hour later, Scarab 2 sat up straight and looked at William in disbelief. He could not help but say, "Lad, you're very brave. You're not surprised that I have the power of a saint. I thought you would be so frightened that you would kneel and beg for mercy." William raised his eyebrows and used his perfect elemental body. Swish! He did not have the power of a saint, but he had the aura of a saint. Scarab 2 instantly went from sitting to kneeling. He blinked his big eyes and said, "Little brother, you're so awesome. You look like the kind of hero who can save the world. I've decided. You can come with me to defeat the final Demon King." Scarab 2 was dumbfounded. "Get lost. Give me the information. What's the use of a man like you? I alone am enough." The corners of William's mouth twitched. "Ahem, I'm not familiar with this move. Actually, it's my first time using it. I didn't use it against Scarab 2 because I knew that he had a trump card. Let me practice a little more. As long as I get used to it, it won't be a problem to maintain it for 5 minutes." Scarab 2 was in a difficult position. He did not believe that William could kill Scarab 1, but he had other goals in mind. In particular, why was Scarab 2 together with Scarab 1? What was the motive of the godly slaying temple? It was to slay a god. The key was to slay a god. Scarab 2 was a member of the sacred tribe and the moon people. His hatred for the gods was beyond the imagination of other races. The sacred talisman continent was as big as the gods' continent and the endless sea. How big were the 3 moons? They were only as big as the 3 legendary continents. After the sacred tribe created the planets, they slowly moved the resources of the sacred talisman continent over a long period of time. Then they formed the moons. But this was the hatred of extermination. How could the sacred tribe forget? But Scarab 1 had a problem. Scarab 2 had interacted with him for a long time and discovered that there was something wrong with him. He seemed to be very interested in destroying everything in the world. The sacred tribe did not like the gods, but they did not have much prejudice against the humans, elves, and winged race, who were also enslaved by the gods. Before the sacred talisman continent was destroyed, the sacred tribe already knew how miserable the living conditions of these races were, especially the humans, elves, winged race, dwarves, and so on. They practiced the techniques passed down by the sacred tribe. Now they were in an alliance. They were allies who fought against the gods together. But Scarab 1 had the desire to destroy the entire world. Or rather, it was a desire to devour everything. He had once discovered that many talented professionals had been taken away by Scarab 2 in the Temple of Gods. After that, they had never appeared again. There were also geniuses who were lucky enough to kill the reincarnations of the gods and devour their origins. In the end, they disappeared in various ways. Such situations kept happening. Scarab 2 was really afraid. He even hid here. William glanced at him and said, "Don't think too much. Tell me, who is Scarab 1? Him." Scarab 2 clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "If I'm not wrong, he's the strongest warrior in the southernmost part of the Endless Ocean, the Hope Continent." William took 2 steps back in disbelief. The 12th of the 12 human sages, Chloris? How is that possible? In his previous life, after he became a transcendent? Yes, after he became a transcendent, he was killed by the Lord God. He was killed by the combined forces of many Lord Gods. That battle also caused the Hope Continent to completely collapse. The Australian brothers had to disperse to various continents. William fell into deep thought. He did not know if what Scarab said was true or not. But whether it was true or not, how could he fight against the 12 human sages? Did he want to become enemies with the entire human race? Damn. So what if he knew his identity? Chapter 679. What were the 12 sages of the humans? They were the most powerful beings at the pinnacle of the sages. They had led the humans to become the masters of the Third Era. Some of the 12 sages had perished, some had disappeared, and some had become the heirlooms and pillars of the empires. Regardless, their contributions would never be forgotten by the humans. The temples of the 12 sages could be found in any human empire's capital city. They were worshipped by countless humans, especially now that there were only a few of the 12 saints of the human race left. However, when it came to this kind of old man who had made incredible contributions, whether it was the human race empire or the new saints, they all had to maintain the most basic level of respect. Chris was one of the 12 sages of the humans. If William dared to attack him, he would be making an enemy of the human empires and the humans of the gods' continent. The peerless battle sage, who seemed to be on good terms with him, might sever ties with him and even attack the City of Dawn. He was not alone. If he was full, his family would not be hungry. Every move he made would affect how the other powers viewed the City of Dawn. In William's previous life, after Chris had become a sage, in version 6.0, he had attracted the joint attack of many gods. He had even destroyed the entire Hopeland. But was he dead? Who knew? William did not have the chance to know. He had died before completing the game. But according to novels, movies, television dramas, and animes, those sly old foxes and Voldemort often had many life-saving methods, so it was possible that they were still alive. In fact, they even caused the main gods to attack them in order to create a method for themselves to fake their deaths. This was not impossible. Scarab 2 looked at William's gloomy expression and twitched his mouth. I said that it would be difficult to kill him, especially when this is only my guess. William could not help but clench his fists as he walked over. Ahem, hey, don't be rash. Don't hit my face. Actually, this can't be considered a guess. It's based on my long contact with him and some of the details he revealed. That's how I came to this conclusion. But there is no evidence. If we want to kill him, we have to be fully prepared. We can't expose our identities. Scarab 2 told William his plan. He told him that he could meet him at the shrine of murderous gods. This was the perfect time to kill Scarab 1. However, it was not easy to make an appointment with Scarab 1. He had to come up with a huge excuse. He also needed to gather all the members of the Murdering God Palace to make it seem more formal. But at that time, there would be a total of 7 Saint State experts. Then, Scarab 2 explained once again, Scarab 4, 5, and 6 are all his men. Scarab 2 and 7 can help me deal with him. Now, with you included, if we work together, we might be able to kill him. The corners of William's mouth twitched. We can't get someone else to do our dirty work. I feel that if we tell someone about Scarab 1's identity, someone might know. Scarab 2 immediately interrupted. He stood up and said, Until now, I've only told you about Scarab 1's identity. In your normal state, your combat power is only at the intermediate level of a sage, so it won't cause any changes. However, if you tell more sages, Scarab 1's inexplicable divination ability will definitely detect the problem. Is that so? Logically speaking, the higher my level, the higher the chance of killing him. Didn't you despise my combat power? William raised his eyebrows. He felt that Scarab 2 was hiding something. Or rather, Scarab 1 had a treasure that he did not want to miss. He had to kill Scarab 1 with his own hands. Enough. You're very strong. If we work together, we might be able to kill him. Scarab 2 spoke confidently, but no one knew what he was thinking. William suddenly asked, Where is the shrine of murderous gods? Scarab 2's expression changed slightly. William instantly understood. Scarab 2 definitely did not know the exact location of the shrine of murderous gods. Every time they went to the shrine of murderous gods, Scarab 1 must have used a secret technique to send them there. The location of this alternate dimension must be extremely mysterious. Scarab 2's objective was not to kill Scarab 1. Instead, it was to obtain a certain treasure from the shrine of murderous gods. William had asked Scarab 3 to bring the treasure to Scarab 1 if he discovered that Scarab 1 was about to become a transcendent sage. This was probably Scarab's last struggle. If Scarab 1 really became a transcendent sage, William would not have any more chances. As for how William knew that Scarab 1 would definitely not become a transcendent sage and would fail, he would have to do some research. But William did not expose him. Instead, he allowed Scarab 3 to continue introducing some of Scarab 1's abilities. 3 hours later, William sat cross-legged on the ground. He rubbed his chin and fell in a deep thought. When he was one of the 12 sages of the human race, it was stated that he was a space element warrior. But according to Scarab 2's introduction, His performance in the Shrine of Murderous Gods was unimaginable. Besides his space element abilities, he also revealed his wind and thunder, metal, wood, and water element endowments. If a player had so many talent attributes, they would have to complete hundreds of millions of quests to get the EXP needed to advance from Saint to Transcendent Saint. But come to think of it, if Scarab 1 was the god of devouring, he would have lived for a long time. He could have completed such an incredible training. After all, he was the god of devouring. In the first era, he had disguised himself as the gnome sage. In the second era, he had also done some things. In the third era, he had transformed into one of the 12 sages of the human race. But if he devoured all the attributes, he would definitely become a true god. He would not be able to attain the transcendent sage level. Then is there a possibility he didn't devour all the endowment attributes? Is there something missing? For example, there are very few professionals with endowment attributes like luck and misfortune. Some even don't exist. Back then, the dragon race was very powerful. There were tens of thousands of giant dragons. But from the beginning of the second era until now, there has never been such an existence. This means that the god of devouring gave the opportunity to become a true god to the Dragon King as an experiment, but he missed it. The god of devouring was tricked by himself. He might even need to become a transcendent sage first before heading to the place where the true gods perish to search for the true god law origin. Only then would he be able to improve further. William's eyes lit up. He had been so worried about the god of devouring. If he did not do it well, he might be killed. So, what does Scarab 2 want to obtain? William narrowed his eyes. It was definitely not the so-called devouring god's origin skill. This was the god of devouring's endowment. The secret skill that he had imparted had the effect of devouring, but it did not have the effect of absorbing. In other words, everyone could use the devouring god's origin skill. But what could one do after devouring? One's physique was not suitable for absorbing this kind of origin. In the end, it would become a burden to one's training. Only the god of devouring could absorb the attribute origins that had been devoured. Scarab 2 looked at William for a long time without saying a word. It was as if he did not want to do anything with William. He looked conflicted. After pondering for a long time, he finally said, "Rumor has it that he has a lore divine weapon." "Oh, I thought he had the world tree." The corners of William's mouth twitched. The function of a transcendent divine weapon was similar to that of a divine weapon. It was just that the quality was better, the attributes were better, and the upper limit of the attack was higher. But these things were not too important to a lore divine weapon. Usually, only world treasures with special abilities could attract William's attention. Yes. How do you know that he has the world tree? Scarab 2 looked at William in surprise. William also looked at Scarab 2 in bewilderment. He could not help but gnash his teeth and say, "Brother, you'll be struck by lightning if you lie. Are you trying to bluff me?" "Why would I lie to you? It's the truth. Get lost. I'm leaving. You can continue to pee and smooth things over." William rolled his eyes. It would be fine if he lied to others. He had the world tree in his house. How dare you lie to me like that? F***CK dog orchid. Did he think that William was a fool? But Scarab 2 hurriedly stopped him. He made up his mind and said, "I'm telling the truth. But his world tree is dead, and it has been refined into a transcendent divine weapon. This is the biggest secret that I know." William stopped in his tracks. He could not help but ask, "Dead world tree, where did he come from? The elves?" Scarab 2 narrowed his eyes and sneered. Scarab 1's current identity is one of the 12 human sages, but he definitely has an even older lifespan. In the second era, he plotted to obtain the main body of the world tree and refined it into a transcendent divine weapon. Oh yes, this thing is also known as a world treasure in the God's continent. William clenched his fists and took a deep breath. He almost wanted to beat someone up, but this way, the figure of the god of devouring became more and more mysterious to him. He was the great gnome sage of the first era. He was the mastermind behind the explosion of the world tree in the second era. He was one of the 12 human sages of the third era. My gosh, with the shrewdness and planning of the god of devouring, it was a waste of talent that he did not become a lord deity. The corners of William's mouth twitched. If the god of devouring had been born a few years earlier, and if William could have become a lord deity by relying on his faith, he might have become autistic like them, and there would not have been so much trouble in the first, second, and third eras. But why did he obtain the main body of the world tree and refine it into a transcendent divine weapon? To be honest, William had planted the world tree in his house, but he did not know much about it. He only wanted the world tree to mature and provide him with various resources. William did not have the intention to kill the world tree and refine it into a transcendent divine weapon. He felt that it was a waste. But suddenly he was shocked. If the god of devouring was the mastermind behind the destruction of the main body of the world tree, was the god of devouring the main body of the world tree left on that small island? Was he waiting for someone to take it away? Gosh, what is he trying to do? William was shocked. Fortunately, Moses was at home, but he still felt uneasy. He felt that the transcendent divine weapon of the world tree had an inexplicable connection with the world tree in his house. The world tree. The ability of the world tree was to create a small world that contained thousands of rules. As long as enough time passed, a world that was comparable to the god's continent could be born. Chapter 680. William was not interested in Scarab II's plan. This was because he did not think that the god of devouring, which required multiple lords to deal with, could be easily dealt with by him in his current state. It would take some time. It would be best if his avatar reached the peak of the deity level and he himself reached the same level. When the two of them combined again, he had at least 80% confidence that he could kill Scarab II. As for now, he was not free. In particular, this SSS-level mission did not have a time limit. It would not be a problem to drag on for another 2 to 3 years. After William obtained so much information and found out Scarab II's identity, he did not have to worry anymore. The main mission of the legendary continent had gone astray, but the progress of the god's continent had not changed much, and the arrival of the deities had not been brought forward. As long as he could maintain his current state, he had nothing to fear. He might as well find out the problem with the Yggdrasil. He wanted to find out the relationship between the Yggdrasil and the Yggdrasil that he had planted. Hence, William mercilessly left, leaving behind a tearful Scarab II. Those who did not know would have thought that he was William's abandoned wife. But after William left, Scarab II was dumbfounded. Who was he? What was his name? Where did he come from? How could he inform him? Damn, do I have to wait for him here? Isn't this a trap? Scarab II's mouth twitched. But after hesitating for a while, he realized that he could not snatch the Yggdrasil away. Hence, he could only stay here and train in seclusion. William did not encounter any trouble on his way back. After all, he was not the kind of man who had a halo of hatred. He would encounter enemies everywhere, and they would either rob him of his wealth or his body. Of course, he did not have a female companion, so he did not have to worry about being robbed. But some people wanted to hug his shoulder and have a chat. What kind of trouble did he want to encounter in the space tunnel? He had a powerful wife at home. It was enough for him to know. He did not have to show off his wealth in different ways. He was already a sage. A journey of a few hours, and he had to use a sage spatial positioning scroll. How many minds did he have at home? Did he dare to say, "Sorry, there are too many. I really can't find all of them"? But no matter what, it took William 3 minutes to reach home. He ignored the many players who were chasing after him. He stepped into the forbidden area of Rainbow Lake and disappeared without a trace. Today's Rainbow Forbidden Area was no longer a desolate scene, except for the World Tree. This was because, in addition to the epic and legendary professions living in the World Tree, many Grandmaster professions had recently moved here because their loyalty had reached the standard. They could also use the magic aura to cultivate, and their breakthroughs were simply soaring. There was no other way. The World Tree's halo could now expand to 1,000,000 square meters. But now it was limited to 100,000 square meters, and the mana density was off the charts. The crown of the World Tree was above the clouds, and one could see the sea of clouds and the starry sky. The scenery was like a fairyland. As for the scenery under the World Tree, it added a lot of charm because of the colorful flowers that would never wither. The remaining Rainbow Lake was also completely improved by the magic power aura and the life aura. When some elves first came in, they could not imagine that the forbidden area of Rainbow Lake would become such a paradise. In fact, they were right. If this was the world of immortal cultivation, the forbidden area of the World Tree would be the world's best paradise. They had originally built a magic military factory here, specializing in the manufacture of powerful destructive weapons. But when they saw it, they were shocked. Logically speaking, the function of the Rainbow Lake was to be completely absorbed by the World Tree. But after the World Tree grew to its current state, it did not need to absorb water, nor did it need to absorb magic. It could even feed back magic. But what did the World Tree rely on to grow? The subtle rules of the world of gods, some polluted magic, in short, everything that could not be absorbed by professionals and magical beasts would be absorbed by the World Tree. Basically, it could be said that the current World Tree could absorb the chaotic magic and subtle rules of half of the legendary continent. And these rules became its own nutrients, allowing it to grow taller and bigger. The former Rainbow Lake had become a small pool. This small pool was not very deep, but the water here had been assimilated into epic quality life water and magic water. It even had two attributes at the same time. Some freshwater fishes that originally had no intelligence had now become intelligent aquatic beasts. They were extremely nutritious. Yes, the small fish that William used to nourish his kidneys were kept here. No one else was allowed to eat them. Other than that, as long as the land was covered by the World Tree's aura, it contained a lot of nutrients. Let's put it this way. No matter the conditions and environment, precious potions, plants, and flowers could be grown here. Originally, William and the others had already reached the sage state, so they did not need these things much. Hence, they had forgotten about this matter. But with the arrival of the Grandmaster and epic professionals, every inch of land under the World Tree was put to good use, not to mention other things. The production of these potions was beyond the imagination of many empires. Not only could these potions make the professionals of the City of Dawn stronger, but they could also be sold at a high price, bringing great profits to the City of Dawn. It was simply a profitable business. But because of this, when William stepped into the World Tree, he could not find a place to land. But the professionals who were chosen to live in the World Tree were at least Grandmaster, and everyone could fly. In addition, when William saw so many flowers and plants, as well as various potions and potion fairies, he felt very pleased. "Bring me in." William spoke with his heart. Swish! William appeared in the small world. Moses, who was meditating, was also teleported over without any resistance. "What's the matter?" Moses asked curiously. William frowned and said in a deep voice, "Before my father blocks everyone's fate, help me calculate the connection between the World Tree of the Elves and this World Tree." So far away. Moses had a headache. It was not that she was unwilling, but after Roger's luck started to block the fate of all living beings, the effect of divination became worse and worse. In addition, the World Tree of the Elves had fallen in the Second Era. The time difference between the two was too great. But William shook his head mysteriously. He walked behind Moses and hugged her waist with both hands. He whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, I'll let you feel the calculation power of the Lord God again." After he finished speaking, the power of thousands of rules was channeled into William's body from the World Tree. His aura instantly soared to the transcending sage realm, and it was still getting stronger. But he did not feel any discomfort, and he did not need to use his elemental body. Because this was a small world. Because he was the owner of this small world. He could easily reach the combat power of a transcending sage with the help of the World Tree. He could also control various rules and magic. He was the creation god of this small world. Of course, all of this was aided by the World Tree. So if an outsider barged into this place, William could cut him into pieces and imprison him forever. The prince then poured all his energy into Moses' body. "Oh!" Moses groaned. Her face was flushed as she pursed her lips. The feeling of being channeled into her body was unimaginable, and the feeling of returning to the transcending sage realm fascinated her. Fortunately, Moses was not a little woman who was obsessed with this. She was the goddess of magic. She immediately started to deduce the relationship between the two world trees. Time passed slowly. Moses furrowed her brows. But William didn't mind. His endurance in the small world was undeniable. In particular, this situation did not cause any backlash to Moses. It was even more beneficial to her. Perhaps she could advance to the transcending sage realm in advance. Just like that, a full 3 hours passed. Moses' eyes lit up, and her lips curled into a smile. I've caught you. But this state did not last long. In less than 5 seconds, Lin Sanjiu had been waiting. Swoosh! The lines in front of Moses' eyes broke, and she signaled William to stop. William shrugged and deactivated his transcending sage state. But his hands were still in the same position. Moses did not wait for him to ask anything. Moses frowned and looked at him. Someone left a secret door in this world tree. It's connected to another world tree. Or rather, it was made into a world treasure. William excitedly pinched her small face. Can the secret door be resolved? Yes. Moses struggled and slapped William's hand away. Since it's been found, it can definitely be resolved. That's good. D*MN, I'm scared to death. However, Moses was a little vexed. But that guy said something to me. What? He threatened me? I'll skin him alive now. William laughed coldly. Even the secret door had been resolved by him. William had a transcending sage father. Why would he be afraid of him? Yes, he threatened me. He said that if you dared to find trouble with him, he would reveal that you have the world tree, Moses said helplessly. The prince was stunned. Gosh, he had forgotten about this. Since the world tree was left behind by Moses, he would definitely know who had taken the world tree. No, let's not talk about this first. Did you deduce the function of the world treasure in those few seconds? Devour. Moses laughed coldly. I also sensed the aura of the god of devouring from that person. He wanted to use the world treasure created by the world tree to devour the origin power of the world tree. If there are no accidents when a world tree matures, he will use a strange method to absorb all the origin power of the world tree. Then, he will attain his realm. It's similar to what I imagined. William raised his eyebrows. He felt that he could only deal with the god of devouring as one method to become a true god, even though they were all methods of devouring. But the first method was to devour the origin power of the world tree. The second method was to go to the place where the true gods perished and devour the rules of the true bodies. However, if he was able to come up with 2 ways to become a true god in the first and second era, then in the third era, would it be possible for him to come up with a 3rd way? William suddenly froze. Gosh, the final boss of the god's world seemed to be very cautious. But then again, did he offend the goddess of bad luck? He had found 2 methods to become a true god, but he had survived for so many years. Was he the real unlucky one? If not for that, why did he not have the guts to plant the world tree? He had placed the world tree in such a secret location. TSK. Wasn't he waiting for Lucky Emperor to take the world tree away? Oh, you're on the same level. William narrowed his eyes. He was confident. After all, they were on the same level. Apologies. I haven't lost before. Of course, William was also very cautious. The god of devouring had not died for so many years. It proved that he was not an ordinary person. Chapter 681. When William thought that the god of devouring's luck was similar to his, he was completely relieved. As an expert of the same level, he was confident that he could defeat any opponent with low luck. However, he did not leave the small world. Instead, he accompanied Moses to block the back door. It had to be said, the god of devouring was quite skillful. He had made the back door extremely secretive. Behind the back door was a root of the world tree, which was specially used to absorb the subtle rules. The effect of the devouring rules was similar to the root of the world tree. If Moses did not have the super sage deduction ability to find the connection between the two, it would be very difficult to find this loophole. And now, the world tree was getting bigger and bigger. It was more than 9,000 meters tall. The number of elves born from it was also increasing rapidly. There were more than 3 million dawn elves in the small world. The strongest among them were the first generation of elves. With the help of life and magic halos, some of them had even reached the legendary realm. However, not many people knew that there were elves in the small world. Besides some fellows who entered the world tree and were not allowed to come out again, only Moses and the little princess knew about this. Other than that, others only knew that William had a world tree, but they did not know that the world tree could already give birth to elves. After all, even the elves did not know much about the distant history. They knew that the world tree was their mother, and that the world tree could give birth to elves. However, they had never seen it before, so they did not dare to be too sure. This small world is getting bigger and bigger. It's basically equivalent to half of the legendary continent. If the world tree continues to grow, it may give birth to a world comparable to the God's continent. Moses knew that there was a small world inside the world tree, but he had never been here before. She was very curious about this small world. Mo, who was once a god, could also create a small world. But now, she discovered a problem. There is a big difference between the small world created by God and the small world born inside the world tree. Among them, the most important was the perfection and stability of the rules. It did not mean that the small world created by God did not contain all the rules. But this kind of small world was usually placed on the God's continent. The rules contained in the small world were also given by the God's continent. The God could only borrow the rules, but could not control them. But the small world created by the world tree could exist independently from the God's continent. Or, the world tree was the foundation of this small world. Moses also discovered another problem. When this small world grew larger, it might even be born from the world tree and form a real world. Then, this situation would be a little unusual. In fact, on this point, the world tree was equivalent to the true God of creation, a natural-born true God. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't transform, he would be able to beat up all living beings. Actually, I want to know how big the small world controlled by the elves was at the end of the Second Era. William stroked his chin. The world tree exploded, and most of its main body was snatched away by the god of devouring. The rest of the plants were either destroyed or picked up by the elves. But what was certain was that the small world that was born in his body had been torn apart, and it had been divided up by the many Sidhi, and it had been passed down to this day. Therefore, it was very difficult for William to imagine how many small world fragments the elves controlled and how many elves were hidden in them. It was just that his relationship with the elves wasn't very good. Now, even if he wanted to go to the small world controlled by the Blackleaf elves to investigate, they probably wouldn't care about him. But after thinking for a while, Mo shook his head at him. Don't imagine the elves to be so terrifying. The explosion of the world tree didn't affect the elves too much, but it definitely affected the small world. You also said that the small world in his body was also torn apart. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been divided up by the elves. With such an exaggerated fluctuation, the elves in the small world will definitely suffer heavy losses. Even if there are many elves left, the number won't be as many as you think. William was slightly stunned. You're right. If the elves really have a large number of clansmen left, they won't be willing to give up the position of the master of the era to the humans. Especially after the small world is torn apart, the rules will definitely not be too perfect. There will be some experts inside, but at most, they will be at the peak of the Sage Realm. If they want to step into the Supreme Sage Realm, they will have to come out and make use of the perfected rules of the God's continent. William narrowed his eyes. Now that he was getting stronger, he had a better understanding of the trump cards of the various races. And the more he understood, the clearer he was about the general direction of the Lord of the Gods. William could no longer treat the memories of his previous life as everything. He needed to change his view of the future. That's the truth. Actually, you should have let me in to take a look. I suddenly realized that the expanding small world is of great help to my training. It can even allow me to step into the Supreme Sage Realm in advance. Moses narrowed his eyes. How do you feel now? Now that you've retrained, if you enter the Supreme Sage Realm again, you should be stronger than in your previous life, right? Mo, Emo nodded proudly. That's only natural. I was once the goddess of all-element magic, and my control over magic was innate. I didn't need to cultivate it all, and I could use it naturally. But now that I've cultivated again, I've understood these things from the root. If I can step into the supreme sage realm again, I should be much stronger. That's amazing. William bit the woman's small face in front of him. Emo dodged. Suddenly, she asked in puzzlement, "You can use the power of the rules of the world tree in the small world to maintain yourself in the state of a supreme sage. Have you ever thought of using the power of the small world in the God's continent?" William narrowed his eyes. "How do you know that I can't do it?" The woman bit her lips. "Because I realize that you can't last long outside." "Oh, Auntie Leong, I think you're crazy. Let me tell you, don't think of leaving the small world today. No, one day is not enough." 7 days later, His Royal Highness stealthily caught 3 fish from the small pool. He did not dare to return to his home on the world tree. He was afraid that the little princess next door would catch him. He could only swallow his anger and eat grilled fish outside. Fortunately, there were enough nourishing fish, so it was not a waste of nutrients. After a few hours, William walked out of the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake in high spirits and returned to the City of Dawn. Most of the players had reached the Grandmaster level, and there were very few high-level players. Those with lower levels were the new players. For the players, the Gods was a very magical game, because in this game, it was easy to double or triple the amount of time. In version 1.0, half a year had passed. The players had played in the real world for a whole year. In version 2.0, 1 year had passed. The players had played in the real world for a year. In version 5.0, 10 years had passed. The players had played in the real world for a year, but they had experienced 10 years in the game. In other words, the flow of time in the Gods was unimaginable. Playing this game was equivalent to gaining many years of lifespan for no reason. This made many people dumbfounded. Many people had stayed in the game for too long. When they went out, they developed some kind of illusion. They couldn't even tell the difference between reality and the game. But discussions about this situation were basically blocked in the forum. William had searched on the internet in his previous life, but he did not see any news discussing the flow of time in the Gods game. It was obvious that someone was controlling the flow of time. Of course, the feeling of time being lengthened existed in every virtual reality game, but it was not as obvious as in the Gods game. The official explanation of the Gods was very simple. Everything was an illusion. Do not be addicted to virtual reality games. Return to reality and devote yourself to the construction of the solar system. That was what humans should do. It was the first time that many players had seen an official advising them not to play the game. They were very impressed. William looked at the discussion posts on the official forum. Some players were saying that the officials had lied to them and that there was a big power involved. There were also some players who were defending the officials. He could not help but frown. The more he understood about the Gods world, the more he understood how mysterious the game company was. Or rather, the background behind the game company was very shocking. But he did not know how they had created this game. But, as a transmigrator, he should not think so much. It was completely useless. Should he ask if he wanted to go back? Why would he want to go back? To control the solar system? That was too boring. The Gods world was also in the universe. It would be better to explore the boundless sea of stars after he became the best. 7 days ago, Land of Hope, in the house of the last of the 12 human sages. Suddenly, an extremely powerful aura erupted from Christ, turning his own bedroom into dust. Only then did he manage to calm down. He looked at the world tree in his hand and could not help but curse angrily. D*M*. This bunch of lucky people. Why do they always interrupt my plan to become a true god? The Dragon King of the first era was like that. The second era wanted to control the world tree, but it ended up in a mess. Now, I found another way. The lucky lord of the City of Dawn found a back door and discovered my secret. D*MN is the goddess of luck blind. Chloris slammed the world tree onto the ground in exasperation, but he sighed and picked it up again. There was no other way. He could only use the second last method to break through. For example, the world tree. Even if he could not use it to devour the rules of the other world tree, it had other uses. Fortunately, I'm talented and cautious. Since I can't attack from the world tree, I'll enter the transcending sage realm and pretend to attack the Dragon King. The god of devouring narrowed his eyes. He decided to enter the transcending sage realm after the gods arrived. His previous attempt to break through had attracted the attention of many people. They might be waiting for him to break through again so that they could kill him. But if that was the case, he would be able to use another method: fake death and rebirth. The god of devouring looked at the world tree in his hand. He suddenly laughed and started to fiddle with it. After a while, the world treasure became more and more like a human. The god of devouring wanted to mold him into a handsome man. It was a pity. His vision was limited. His knowledge and imagination were limited. No matter how handsome he was, there was a huge gap between him and the prince. He had to say, he should really go to the City of Dawn. It would be best if William could be a model and mold him. Chapter 682. William knew nothing about the god of devouring. Of course, it did not matter even if he knew. The god of devouring was one of the 12 sages of the human race. Even if William said something, no one would believe him. Even if others had doubts, how could they tell if Chores was a human or a god? Who knew how the god of devouring disguised himself? Perhaps he was in the body of a human and not the body of a god from the mythological era. More importantly, there was no evidence. His Royal Highness had intended to tell the Pope of Light about this matter, but the two of them only had a PY value of around 800 points, and they were not exactly close to each other. The cunning pontiff might not believe him. Even if he was a supreme sage, he was still a human. He might have been taken care of by Chores. There was another problem. William did not want to expose the world tree. He knew that if he did not touch the world tree would not provoke him. Now, the only way was to become stronger and become a supreme sage. This was the only way to prevent others from having ill intentions towards him, especially towards the elves, who were the most important race in the history of the world. It's time to go to the Odin Temple. William narrowed his eyes. After his clone of Odin became a god, he relied on faith for his training. Other than that, he was either researching the method of faith or building a god weapon for himself. That was right. William had a set of god weapon. It was a set of god weapon armor that Odin had spent countless treasures and 3,000 years to build for him. But the geographical location of the Odin Temple is a little tricky. William's mouth twitched. As Lord Dow, he had dug up countless graves. When he built the god temple for himself, he had to make sure that nothing would go wrong. Would the temple be in the gods' continent? No. For 3 eras, the great dragons, elves, and humans had turned the gods' continent upside down countless times. William knew that if the temple was placed in the gods' continent, it would definitely be dug up. Therefore, Odin had placed it in the deepest part of the dark world. The gods called it the Dark Abyss. It was a sealed place. Did the gods have enemies during the mythological era? No. The greatest enemy of the gods was faith. However, it could also be said that there were enemies. After all, there were some existences that the gods couldn't kill during the mythological era, so they could only be completely sealed away, which was sealed in the Dark Abyss. After all, before the birth of the gods, there were already many wild beasts in the gods' continent. Those existences were also born to be in the legendary realm, and some could even step into the saint realm. These creatures had caused a lot of trouble for the gods. But that wasn't the most important thing. Instead, it was some kind of innate evil spirit that couldn't be killed and devoured a large amount of mana. Some holy berserkers could even be controlled and turned into puppets by the gods. But you can't imagine, before the gods had reached the god realm, they had encountered an over-god realm innate vicious spirit. No one knew where it was born, and no one knew why it was so powerful. If not for the fact that it only knew how to use brute force and was terrible at using rules, the gods would not have survived until now. The gods fought with it for 3 days and 3 nights before they finally managed to seal it in the Dark Abyss. After Odin and the others reached the main god realm, would they still care about an innate evil spirit of the same realm? Because of this, Odin took the opportunity to throw it in the main god palace. William couldn't imagine why Odin's clone would be so careful. Even if he was afraid of being dug up, there was no need to bury it so deep. Even after he reached the saint realm, he didn't dare to casually take it out without the power of a saint for a long time. Whatever, now that I have the blood essence of a true god, I don't care if you're an overgod innate vicious spirit, especially after I put on the main god set. Who do you think you are? William stroked his chin and walked arrogantly into the teleportation hall. Swoosh! He had already arrived at the 10 outposts. Ursula sensed his aura and couldn't help but send message. Why are you here again? You've caused such a big mess in the city of evil. The 7 devils of darkness are already very unhappy. They almost launched an attack on all the outposts. Tui. William rolled his eyes. Give them 100 phoenix hearts and dragon guts. Ask them if they dare to do it. I'll ask my father to kill them. You? Ursula took a deep breath. He said in a low voice, all right. You have a super saint for a father. You're awesome, but stop wandering around the cities of the 7 devils. Got it. Hey. Where are you going? Tell me your travel records. You've stirred up a hornet's nest. If your father doesn't come, I'll ask the Pope of Light to clean up your mess. The prince ignored the envious, jealous, and hateful old man. He turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared without a trace. Ursula pursed his lips and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He continued to absorb the darkness origin law. He had almost exposed his little secret. Although it was harmless, what if someone misunderstood him? Light? Darkness? These 2 most resistant origin powers were equivalent to one positive and the other negative, one yin and one yang. But if he could really integrate them, he would be able to step into the super saint realm. Not only would his strength undergo unimaginable changes, but he would also be able to find the path to becoming a true god. Who created the Temple of Light? It was Ursula himself. But he preferred to hide behind the scenes. After he passed the position of the Pope of Light to his eldest disciple, he retreated and changed his name. He became the Deputy Temple Lord for 10,000 years. Who created the Palace of Darkness? Sorry, it was created by his second disciple. He was the famous fellow who dared to call himself the Dark God. Let's put it this way. He might not have many other things in his life, but he had many disciples who were at the sage realm. He had even taught a super saint. How impressive was that? This was also the key reason why the Temple of Light and the Palace of Darkness seemed to be fighting externally, but they were extremely united internally. In fact, when something major happened on the legendary continent, from this, one could see that the Temple of Light and the Palace of Darkness were old hooligans who were in cahoots with each other. In the face of the so-called right and wrong, these 2 forces cooperated with each other sincerely. The human empire, the magic sanctuary, and the mercenary guild all felt that this was a little strange. As for his identity, actually, it was not a big secret. The sage experts of the Temple of Light and the Palace of Darkness knew about it. They were all his apprentices. The reason why Ursula hid his darkness attribute was related to the era he was born in. The 3rd era had just begun. The aftermath of the war at the end of the 2nd era had not subsided. Basically, any professionals with darkness endowments, whether they believed in the dark god or not, as long as they were discovered, they would be tied up and burned at the stake. That was as time passed. The prejudice against dark professionals in the 7 continents was not that serious. But Ursula had hidden for so many years. Now, his darkness endowments were his trump card. Naturally, he would not expose them easily. When William had just arrived at the 10 outposts, he vaguely felt the aura of the law of darkness. But he did not think too much about it. This was the dark world. Who knew who was using the law of darkness for experiments? He did not expect that the old fellow, Ursula, was like the male protagonist of a night novel. He practiced light and darkness at the same time. That was awesome. But William had already controlled the dark professional Akeler. Akeler had become a legendary professional and was fighting for a high position in the Palace of Darkness. From the information he received, William had more or less sensed the relationship between the Palace of Darkness and the Temple of Light. But he did not expect the relationship to be so close. Time passed very quickly. William did not conceal himself as he traversed the Dark Continent. Many of the Lords of Darkness sensed his aura. They wanted to retreat 300 kilometers to make way for him. They had no choice. The Lord of the City of Dawn had wreaked havoc in the City of Evil. The Devil King had even respectfully escorted him out of the city gate. They could not do anything to him. As for where the Lord of the City of Dawn was going, it had nothing to do with them. As long as the Lord of the City of Dawn did not find trouble with them, they would just sweep the snow away from their own doorstep. In particular, they were all devils. Why did the Lords of Darkness talk about unity? In the Dark World, there were not many forbidden areas for the Lords of Darkness, but this was the forbidden area of the Abyss. Not only did the aura of the Lord God seal emanate from below, but it also emitted an aura that could even suffocate sages. There was obviously a powerful monster hidden inside. Furthermore, the 7 Devil Kings were once gods. They knew what was sealed here, so they set this place as a forbidden area. They even arranged for 3 Lords of Darkness to guard it. Every 1,000 years, the Lords of Darkness would take turns to strengthen the seal. Stop talking. The 7 Devil Kings were really afraid that the Lord God's spirit would escape. If that happened, the Dark World would be slaughtered. At this moment, William did not conceal his aura. He dashed all the way to the forbidden area of the Abyss. This situation caused the expressions of the 3 Lords of Darkness to change. The sages of the God's continent? This kind of person flew over and wanted to enter the Abyss? Damn it, had he gone to the wrong place? The 3 Lords of Darkness were not well informed. Just as they were about to attack, the Lord of Darkness hurriedly stopped them. He plucked up his courage and came in front of William. In a slightly respectful tone, he said, "Lord of the City of Dawn, please forgive us for not welcoming you. Of course, the most important thing is to congratulate your father for successfully reaching the Supreme Sage level. It's just a congratulatory gift. It's not worth mentioning." The Lord of Darkness threw a space ring to William. The other 2 Lords of Darkness also reacted with a drastic change in expression. They also gave their gifts. Naturally, William accepted the gifts with a smile and patted their shoulders. Just like a superior inspecting his soldiers, the Lord of Darkness' mouth twitched, but he still said, "Your Highness, you must have gone the wrong way. This is a forbidden area set up by the 7 Devil Kings. There is also a seal set up by the Lord God. Where do you want to go? Why don't I lead the way for you?" William glanced at the devil in surprise. He could not help but say, "Brother, you've been in the God's continent before. You speak in such a genteel manner." "Ahem, I like the surface culture very much. I've studied in the God's continent for a period of time." The Lord of Darkness smiled shyly. William laughed. They could not afford to offend him, so they had this kind of attitude. If it were a professional at the pinnacle of the sage level, they would not be so polite. But there was no other way. Ever since his father had become a supreme sage, no matter where he went, there would be people who were willing to be his lackey. It was that real. William would not slap a smiling person. They were all sage professionals. Even though they were from different factions and had different living habits, it did not mean that there was a difference in intelligence. William could only helplessly say, "I'm really sorry. My father left something here, and now he wants me to retrieve it. What do you think I should do?" The 3 Lords of Darkness were stunned. What should they do? **T. William had blocked all the paths. "Go ahead. Don't blame us if you die." But when William entered the depths, the eyes of some of the Lords of Darkness lit up. Could it be that there was not a monster down there? Could it be some kind of powerful treasure? Oh my God. The 3 Lords of Darkness had the initiative and started to crazily shake people, not to mention other things. If there was a treasure that could decide one's fate, it did not matter if one's father was a supreme sage. They still had the backing of the God of Darkness. But they did not know. William flew over arrogantly to arouse the greed of this group of people. He had the real skeleton, the hand of Sage, and the secret of Odin. He could easily enter the barrier. If these guys wanted to come in to look for something, they would have to tear the barrier from the outside. TSK. A ferocious spirit from the celestial realm had appeared. The dark world would be a little tricky. This silly fool had been imprisoned for so many years. Who knew how much he had grown? The god of darkness might not even be able to defeat him with God's descent. Just one sentence. Come on, it's exciting. Anyway, he did not know what the future main mission was. He would muddle the waters so that everyone would not be able to guess the future. Bang! William descended tens of thousands of meters. In this incomparably dark abyss, the low roars and the frenzied, killing aura became more and more intense. Prince William gently snapped his fingers. Pa! Within a radius of 10,000 meters, there were magic lamps made of thunder. Thunder King. He controlled all thunder magic of the same level. He was that arrogant. Subsequently, William found the weak point of the barrier. He carefully recalled and threw runes to gradually weaken the defensive energy of the barrier. 3 minutes later, William stepped into the barrier, and the barrier behind him was sealed again. Roar! The sound was deafening. A wild and suffocating aura engulfed the area. The prince, on the other hand, looked at the big guys without changing his expression. They were basically at the sage or the peak of the sage realm. The reason why they could be sealed was that they had the characteristic of immortality. In the mythological era, there were not many other things. There were many perverted creatures, but William ignored them and continued to go deeper until he was near the Lord God ferocious spirit. He glanced at the big guy who was bound by layers of chains and stuffed into a cage. Both of them looked at each other. William instantly activated his perfect elemental body to resist the huge pressure. He smiled as he walked towards the Odin temple behind the ferocious spirit. If one were to ask whose temple guards were the strongest, Odin thought that he was invincible. William thought to himself, luckily, the chains are strong enough and haven't broken yet. I thought that after entering the barrier, it would be a mess inside. If I had known, I would have come to take the equipment. But after he showed off his superior aura, the chains on the Lord God ferocious spirit started to creak. A large group of dark lords, including the 7 devil kings, had arrived outside the barrier. Chapter 683. It was rare for the 7 devil kings to gather in the forbidden abyss. They each brought 7 or 8 lords of darkness with them. Among these 60 experts, the weakest was a middle-level sage. There were many professionals who were at the peak of sage level. As long as it was not a lord god or a super saint, they were invincible when they joined forces. If experts like the rune mage and Ursula came here alone, they would definitely be beaten to a pulp. The names of these 7 devil kings were very famous. Many professionals in the gods' continent knew of them. Great Devil King Lucifer, 2nd Devil King Samuel, 3rd Devil King Beelzebub, 4th Devil King Azazel, 5th Devil King Abaddon, 6th Devil King Burial, 7th Devil King Mastama. As for their previous god positions, the god of pride, the god of envy, the god of wrath, the god of sloth, the god of greed, the god of gluttony, and the god of lust. Among them, only the Devil King Burial and Mastama from the City of Evil had some dealings with William. But it was obvious. The god of pride, the great demon king, Lucifer, was the strongest. Just one look from him was enough to make many demon kings fearful. The others looked at Lucifer, who was standing in the center position. They did not know if they should really enter the barrier to explore. But what if there was an opportunity to become a lord inside? Then they could completely sit on the same level as the god of darkness. They did not need to be ordered around by others. They could even break the curse and return to the god's continent. They would no longer have to stay in this dark world. Demon King Samuel was originally looking for the weak point of the barrier. Not long after, he looked at Lucifer and said, I found it. This should be the place where he entered. The other devil kings' eyes lit up. Lucifer reached out and touched the barrier. He raised his eyebrows and said, all of you leave. Many of the lords of darkness were stunned, but they still obediently returned to the top of the abyss. The other devil kings looked at him in confusion. What did he mean by sending our little brother away? Lucifer continued, when the gods sealed that monster, we were only in the legendary realm. We didn't participate in this war at all. However, the defensive power of this barrier is mainly from the inside to the outside. It's very easy for outsiders to enter, but it's very difficult for them to come out unless they have the key to the barrier, which is the corresponding rune magic. Are you saying that the Lord of the City of Dawn has the key? The three demon kings asked in surprise. Yes, maybe it was given to him by his super saint father. Roger's Providence. Is this name surprising to everyone? He was once the Lord God who represented the destiny of our god race. After reincarnating, he gave up his former divine spark and became the god of fate of two worlds. He also participated in this seal. It would be a joke to say that he doesn't know the key. At this point, Lucifer suddenly narrowed his eyes. But back then, there was a chief, god-level, ferocious spirit sealed here. Even if there is an inheritance inside, our speed is not as fast as the Lord of Dawn City. Do you think we should go in? The other demon kings were dumbfounded. You were clearly the one who called us over, yet you said you couldn't go in. What are you trying to do? Then, Lucifer suddenly punched the barrier. The sound was deafening. The barrier, which they had reinforced countless times, did not move at all, but it still consumed some energy. Isn't the purpose of the Lord of Dawn swaggering over here to attract our attention and give us a temptation to rush in and take the opportunity to release that monster? Then we'll fulfill his wish and release the monster inside. At this point, Lucifer's voice became colder. The other demon kings were stunned. What did this mean? Was he going to give up? Damn it. When they stayed in the dark world, the gods also repeatedly reminded them to guard this place well and not to release the monster inside. Otherwise, the seven of them would be the first to be unlucky. The entire dark world might be destroyed. However, the second demon king, Samuel, seemed to understand. He suddenly said, "Do you still remember that curse?" Burial gasped. The seven of us were born relatively late. Back then, we didn't have many believers. If we don't choose to reincarnate or cultivate in seclusion, we will be restricted to the dark world and unable to step into a higher realm. Beelzebub sneered. Unless the day the Lord God descends. Yes, unless the Lord God descends, our curse can only be lifted. However, have you ever thought about it? Although the God of darkness can control us through all kinds of information, have you ever seen him use God's descent? Recently, many Lord gods are still performing God's descent on the gods' continent. However, have you ever seen the God of darkness descend to the dark world? Especially at the city of evil. If the God of darkness had truly helped, he could have used God's descent to kill William instead of letting the four dark knights descend. When Lucifer said this, many people's expressions changed slightly. Could it be that if he used God's descent, the curse would be broken? If I'm not wrong, that should be the case. Lucifer gently patted the barrier with his hand and said softly, "We, the seven demon kings, may seem to be the masters of the dark world, but anyone with a discerning eye would know that we are confined here by the gods. We are also constantly threatened by the over-god, ferocious spirit inside, and have even become the dogs of the god of darkness." Why? Lucifer's voice suddenly became louder. We're also gods. It's just that we were born a little late. If we break the barrier and release that monster, the Lord gods will descend and break our curse. The Lord God's ferocious spirit is wreaking havoc in the dark world. If we hide, the God of darkness will definitely descend and kill this monster. We are wrong. We are ultimately not the masters of the dark world. We don't have to worry about the ferocious spirit being released. I want to become the Lord God. What about you? Lucifer glanced at the six people, whose expressions kept changing. In the end, they reached out and placed their hands on each other. It had been too many years. They had been trapped in the dark world for too long. They were afraid that the monster in the barrier would come out. They were afraid that the God of darkness would kill them. They had long since become brothers who were as close as they could be. Now, why not take the risk to enter the Lord God's realm? If the God of darkness' true body descended, they would probably be completely controlled. Furthermore, the lords of darkness were not around. They did not know what they had done. Who had broken the barrier? Who could say for sure? The Lord of the City of Dawn had plotted against them, but no one knew who would be the scapegoat until the very end. After William found Odin's temple, he walked in with ease. He had dug so many temples. Other than the temple of the Thunder God, this was the first time he walked through the main entrance. Prince William felt a little excited. Not long after, William pushed open the door of the temple. He saw the narcissistic statue of Odin. It pointed one finger at the sky and the other at the ground. Those who did not know would think that the statue was Sakyamuni. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He tried his best to ignore it. Then, he walked in a unique manner. With every step, he threw out several runes into the void. In a short distance of tens of meters, William threw out tens of thousands of rune keys. Finally, he destroyed countless magic traps. Finally, he arrived at the base of the statue. He stretched out his hand and began to knock on a stone brick. A total of 9,999 times. He could not make a single mistake. The intensity of each knock was different. The interval between each knock was also different. After a long time, crack, there was a crisp sound. The base of the statue started to move, revealing a small box hidden below the statue. Done. William chuckled. After retrieving it, he tossed out various rune imprints. Ka! There was another crisp sound. The lid of the box was lifted. A prismatic colored pearl appeared in front of William. It looked like an equipment pearl. William hesitated for a while. He carefully picked up the colored pearl and gently placed it in his space ring. Yep, it was an equipment pearl. It was just a small toy with the ability to self-destruct, but it was definitely quite powerful. Even a main god would be stunned for 3 seconds, and it had a certain degree of soul damage. If a normal saint could dig all the way here, but if he wasn't careful, he would still die. After all, William was an expert in digging. He would not forget to set up numerous traps for his grave. Fortunately, he had an excellent memory and did not forget these small details. If not, he would not be able to retrieve these items before he reached the Supreme Sage realm. Then he dug out the bottom of the small box and took out the transcendental divine pearl hidden in the middle. There was no hesitation. William swallowed it in one gulp. In an instant, his entire body was enveloped by a layer of lightning liquid. But he already had the appearance of a battle armor in his mind. 3 seconds later, a dark brown, streamlined armor had already appeared on the surface of his body. Just by looking at it, he had an extraordinary aura and was very eye-catching. True Thunder, Sacred Armor Quality, Lord God Level, Lord God, Supreme Sage Materials. Creator, Odin Defense, 15,000 Power, plus 800 Physical Strength, plus 600 Agility, plus 500 Intelligence, plus 300 Charm, plus 100 Weight, 83 kg Durability, 210,000 Usage Requirement, Soul, Binding William Blackleaf Usage Requirement, 8,000 plus Power, 8,000 plus Physical Strength Usage Requirement. Have a Sage Thunder Origin. True Thunder, passive overall thunder damage increased by 30%. Sacred Armor, passive overall defense increased by 30%. Full Divine Armor, passive your health points increased by an additional 100,000. When you face a Lord God or Supreme Sage enemy, any damage dealt by the enemy, including elemental damage, true damage, etc., will be reduced by 20%. Power of Odin, active when you use this skill, you are Odin. You are the Lord God. Duration, 30 minutes. Skill cooldown, none. Consumption, none. Usage restriction. When you use this skill, all other buffs on you will be removed. Usage restriction. 3 restriction explanation. When you use the Lord God's power 3 times, your supreme divine weapon will completely drop in quality. Friendly reminder. I feel that you are cheating. Otherwise, I can't understand why your name is on the usage requirement. William's mouth twitched. He couldn't be bothered with the mainframe's complaints. But this was his true trump card. The attributes and skills of this transcendent artifact were basically trash. That was because its greatest use wasn't for those things. William didn't care about defense at all. His body was the biggest meat shield. Odin had created this battle armor for only one purpose. He wanted to leave William 3 super explosive skills. Because he wanted to leave behind this Lord God's power, the attributes and skills of the equipment were very poor. But this was Odin's power at his peak. It could let William use it 3 times. The combat power in this state was far from what perfect body of gold plus unparalleled holy thunder plus true god blood essence could compare to. Let's put it this way. One of them had used fancy moves and had the combat power of a supreme sage, but it was impossible to defeat the Lord God. But the other one, that meant that he had the possibility of defeating the Lord God. But just when William was feeling a little happy, crack, boom, the Odin temple trembled violently. Accompanied by a series of rumbles, cracks had already appeared in the main shrine. William's expression changed. Did that guy break free from chains? But just when he was thinking if he should hide and avoid the limelight, crack, William's expression changed slightly, and he was delighted again. The barrier had really shattered. In the next second, with a furious roar, the god of darkness descended on the body of a lord of darkness. Who is it? Let it go. 7 Devil Kings, Lord of the City of Dawn. William walked out of the Odin temple and stared at the 7 Devil Kings.